Sweet friends, how do you do today? And how do you woo today? And how do you woo you today? Welcome to How to Woo, a podcast on love and making love so we can make sure we're making lives we love. I am your host, Luna Robbie. I am a multi-artist and creative guide obsessed with learning about life, especially from other humans direct, because we all have our own unique perspective and wisdom. So here we are again for some deep listening and a little vacrophilia so we can stay excited about life and co-create a world where taking care of each other is the norm. Let's dive in. Our guest today is into intimate sex and celibacy, identifies as sapio/demisexual, loves foreplay, dirty talk, and having a third, an artist originally from Kansas City, Missouri. Welcome, Olivia.
Hello. Hi.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. I'd like to start out by asking you, how do you woo yourself? How do you woo you? How do you love yourself? How do you romance yourself? How do you woo you?
I feel like I am literally all about like self-love and just like doing things for myself. I feel like I'm the best because I'll find any little reason and be like, that's amazing. Let's go out and get like dessert or do something for ourselves. So I don't know. I guess the question is more for me, like, how don't I woo myself? Saturday or Sunday, I went out, we got a candle, I got a face mask.
I love
But
that.
I made myself fettuccine Alfredo with scallops or whatever. Oh my gosh, it was great. I had myself a nice little glass of wine, a candle. I journaled. I'm super into tarot and kind of like astrology and stuff like that. So I got to kind of like journal for the night and to read my cards and everything. So I will literally, anytime I go out and buy a new crystal, I think that's like wooing for myself.
How did you learn to do that?
Just the self love of it all.
Yeah, and like it sounds like you have it framed in treating yourself too. Did I get that right? Like it's like, I'm doing this for me.
I think it's one of those things where sometimes, like, yes, how you grow up, the things, the opportunities you're given in life can just kind of explain or maybe kind of aspect how things are, I guess you could say. And yeah, it's just one of those things where I just feel like I always had, whether it was my parents were always very good about maybe giving to others, and they're church people and kind of are always spending their time there, sort of a thing. I feel like they were always good at whether it was them giving me that example very explicitly in front of me or even just other adults. I'm very open about the fact that I was a very fortunate child, in the sense of that I got to, take music lessons. I got to be able to go do sports at whatever level I wanted to do them at. And I often had enough talent to be fortunate enough to have my coaches or whoever, giving me that attention and time, or whether it was knowledge and skills, whatever. I just always, I don't know if I want to say I always felt like I was in the spotlight, but in a way, I guess it did, and maybe didn't feel like that to me. But like, yeah, I was always in the position of being receiving of others' knowledge, gifts, whatever, like that. So I guess maybe having it always kind of instilled in me in life, was something I will say, like, yeah, especially in my early 20s or later 20, no, early 20s. I'm still in my 20s, I should say, in my
Yeah.
earlier in my earlier 20s when I kind of got into a darker spot, it wasn't so natural, but I guess like when I maybe thought about it and remembered like, I have had this experience of, being fortunate enough to have adults, yeah, to who were a very good example for me, or very good examples for me, yes, I should say.
Those adults, so I grew up in a household where I too was instilled, duty, service, help others. I did not get the message quite as much of like, and also give that to yourself because we have to be able to also receive, giving and receiving need to be in balance. Otherwise, we're like, I think it was Martin Luther during the Reformation who like gave away his medicine and died, like he was like so into helping people. And so it sounds like you have a lot of comfort with both of those things. Did you have adults in your life who modeled like gracious receiving as well and or giving to themselves?
I would not say that, and I was
Mm.
gonna say something that I would also say for myself is that I don't know if I was always so giving. I think especially when I was younger, because I was like, yes, kind of the younger sibling, especially kind of that bratty younger sibling who seemingly did have all the spotlight and attention and whatnot. I think I was very good at accepting and being like receptive of everything. I wasn't very much good to receive to go give. Let me just say that. Unless it was like a very structured purpose, like we like, yes, did something church related, like with volunteering like that. I definitely was not someone who was maybe good at like going and especially expanding like good, healthy, appropriate all the goodness that was being poured into me, I would not say I was giving out. I was very bratty about what I was giving out. And even looking back on it, I think in terms of kind of like, yes, those adults who were giving to me, it's hard to say. I knew kind of all my coaches and kind of instructors to just kind of a certain scale in front, I guess. I think looking back at it, especially in certain instances, I think about high school, like really late night practices and like whatnot. I sit there and I'm like, I don't know how much that's giving to yourself if we're here until 10 p.m., with practicing and whatnot. For me, that's not necessarily giving to myself,
I could see that story go either way for sure. Yeah, yeah, good point.
Exactly. You sit there, especially kind of, I guess, I have to sit there and I'm like, but I wasn't in the experience of the adult at that time. I was in the experience of the child. So I was kind of the receptor of like the more beneficial aspects to those like 10 p.m. practices, like maybe he hated being there to 10 p.m., but maybe he also liked being there until 10 p.m. because, he got to coach me. I got better at whatever. And like, it's hard to say for other people, what is or isn't giving. And even then, I think sometimes if I think about my parents, it's so interesting. Maybe we're all, but I do think that's what's beautiful about being different, being different people. They sometimes are so, I guess you could say maybe that is where I struggled with my family. Growing up, I always found that they were very good at giving to others. I
Mm.
don't know how much I felt like they were good at giving to me, especially in maybe that kind of attention aspect. Sometimes when I think about it, I focus on attention or maybe knowledge, experience, whatever, it is always kind of the experience I had with like my teachers, my instructors, my coaches, whatever. And it's not always stuff that I maybe learned or got from my parents. They definitely certainly still played a pivotal kind of aspect in giving. And like I said, they're church people, not heavy church people, but they're like church people. They donate their time and stuff like that. So I still kind of had it. I still obviously had it, displayed and exemplified in front of me. But sometimes, yeah, you look at it, I guess maybe it's hard. I think for them, they would definitely say that they give into themselves just as much as they probably, give out to others. When I maybe look at it, sometimes I'm like, no, I wish you guys definitely gave
Mm.
more to you and maybe and it's hard. I don't think I could ever make them see it that way, and so maybe sometimes I need to try and see it more like that, but I think it's an equal thing of maybe learning balance of knowing, when it's appropriate to go out and give and, you know, how to give and whatnot and everything, and maybe other times when it's like, okay to pull back and keep for you and
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I can't help but, as I hear all of that, reflect on what I'm gonna label as like your inner wisdom, right? Like I'm a believer that in every family group or friendship group, chosen family, etc., whatever it is, we all have unique different gifts to give. And so if you're a person who's like, actually receiving is something that I'm okay with, I can learn that from you. It's harder for me, like just because of who knows why. But like, and so maybe you're the one to model and teach that for your family. So you just have this like impulse to receive, like you're okay receiving and then like giving to yourself in these concrete ways. And I think also that's so cool that it's things we might normally do anyway, right? But with this frame of like, this is for me, I deserve this, and kind of almost romantifying what otherwise might be the day-to-day thing. So for me, it's like I'm going not just to any grocery store, but to Whole Foods. And I'm getting not just a heavy organic cream, I'm getting the one in the glass bottle, like.
exactly. Yes, it's like finding the moments you can to kind of romanticize it, and I think there can be kind of a give and take in romanticizing and kind of glamorizing your life. I think you have to be healthy about it, but it's so funny. Yeah, because yeah, I guess I didn't think about it that way either, but it is kind of like, why not take the moments to just kind of to just like yum up life, to just kind of like
Yes.
make it more like satisfying, I guess you could say. And yeah, I was saying before, I guess like to me, there is especially kind of with this the day and the age and the times, there can be such kind of a strict way to look at self-love and everything. It can be kind of packaged in such a tight kind of like box. And sometimes to me, I think it's less about like what you're doing for self-love and just how it feels for you. I love Kraft mac and cheese, right? And there are some nights where I just want to break out that box of Kraft And I'm like, why not? Why not?
Yes.
Like I was saying, respect your fucking elders. We're getting crap. We're gonna break it out. We're not gonna use oat milk either or almond. We're using, sorry, 2% whole. Yes, we are. I might get a little gassy by the end of the night. Maybe that's what I want. And that's it, like, and sometimes I have notes like that too. Like, I think it's more so about how it's like making you feel in the satisfyingness, I guess if that's a word, the satisfyingness of
Yeah.
it all more so than yeah, like what it is that you're doing. If
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
First of all, I love to make up words. People get what it is, and if they don't, then they're not on our wavelength. But I love too the consciousness of just bringing appreciation to every moment. I've realized that appreciation is one of my superpowers, and I shut it down for a while because I got a lot of like, "Ugh, you're always so excited," and then I've started putting myself in different spheres where that's, encouraged or also appreciated. And so I think that self-appreciation or bringing that kind of like joy to our day-to-day things or to the moments where we do go treat ourselves. I know that if I'm going to go out and purchase a coffee, which is not something I do often, I make it for myself. I'm like, ooh, it's a treat. I'm going to bring my journal. I'm going to focus on me, or I'll read this chapter that is something I wouldn't necessarily read at home. And it's kind of creating that specialness. I want to touch back on the idea of like romance in these instances of wooing yourself. Does it feel romantic? Does it feel like platonic friendship? Does it depend on the day? Like, what is that part like for you?
So, yeah, I guess just like at its surface, it's never been romantic, no. I think the romance element has like come more kind of like later into life, especially I think as I've gotten kind of like grown into myself, as I gotten a little bit later into my 20s, as I like to say. Gosh, it's crazy to say this. As I've wanted to like date and then also like, yeah, probably actually go out and have sex again, especially like gotten a little bit more romantic. But at its surface, especially, no, it was just like something that was so naturally kind of instilled in me to like receive and be like receptive. And then like, yeah, even kind of like going back to it, it was so natural to just fall back into that like pattern of what I don't even know if you would call it platonic at first either.
Mhm.
And maybe that's something for me to reflect on later. It's interesting to kind of look back and maybe question like where it was coming from because it wasn't romantic and it wasn't platonic. I would love to say that it is self-love in a sense, but it is kind of like what love maybe are you providing to yourself in that sense?
Or
I de-
nourishment. I don't know, just for me, well, okay, I'm a person who staunchly believes that food needs to be in the categories of love languages. Like food, especially for me, sharing food, whether I am receiving someone else's food or giving them my food, like sharing food is absolutely a love language for me. And that is not an act of service, it's an act of nourishment. And so for me, I've been trying to figure out if nourishment, I'm like, I think it might be its own category and it's related. Like it's not platonic, it's not romantic, it's nourishing. I don't know. This is a fresh noodle for me.
I think that's such a good take. I have to be honest with you. I've never thought of it that way with kind of like food and kind of what is that act? And that is very true. Like there was something so satisfying about you kind of like posing that and saying, yeah, like what is that? It's nourishment. And it is like it is though. And that is its own kind of like act in and of it. I'm a very big believer that not necessarily people don't know what words mean, but people try and liken too many words to kind of like one another, and sometimes it's like things are their own separate categories, like love is not the same thing as hate. Love and like are not really even the same thing either. So it's like,
Yeah.
what is that? Like, what is that category? I think that's a very strong argument if you want to pose it. And like, yeah, I would agree. Maybe that is what that was. It was just kind of like nourishing and like and fulfilling myself, like giving
Yeah.
back into myself.
Well, I just wanted to reveal that when we were accidentally not recording, I discovered your astrology. Can I share what it is?
Of course, yes, go for it.
Like that concept of nourishment was inspired by the fact that you are a Cancer sun. And Cancer is oftentimes about giving and receiving, like, yes, known for crabbiness, and all the water signs can be very moody in their own ways, but like, I mean, can't we all, and
Mhm.
so as I'm thinking here about, someone who loves to receive, and you're a Scorpio moon, so like you have this, like, it's, there is a depth to that, and Scorpio often has that kind of like spiritual quality, warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. Like Scorpios are transformers and healers, so that's your like natural skill. But so you're like here to keep yourself nourished. And as a Gemini rising, of course, you would match me in a love of specificity of language. Like, I know a lot of people get really annoyed because they're like, oh my God, you know what I mean. And I'm like, you know what? 90% of the time when someone goes, you know, and I go, I don't know, especially if there are other people around, the other people didn't know either. And so there's
Exactly.
so often in social groups, we are encouraged to just be like, so that we fit in. And lately I've been like, well, lately,
No.
for the past 6 years, I've been like, actually, I'm not sure if I know what you mean by love.
Yeah.
Actually, like, what is love like for you in these different contexts? And for me, getting into the specificity of that language is part of what helps me grow and connect with people. And that's why I get really curious about language, because like we might use even the same words to mean different things. And also neuroscience tells us that when we study our emotions, our language, our ability to specify the feeling that we are feeling, to articulate it, affects how we are experiencing ourselves. Brene Brown, I think, was the one who did a study of like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people for her book Atlas of the Heart, and was asking people, you know, feelings that they feel most often. And I think it was like the three basics were like mad, sad, maybe happy. Like it was like basic, you know. And
Yeah.
so I love that specificity when it comes to like love, self-love, romance, etc.
I realize I feel like I've always been so specific with my language. Part of it I do 100% attribute not only to being a Gemini rising, but I have my Mercury in Gemini as
Me
well.
too.
And
Me
I've
too.
had
What house?
so my Mercury, I have a 12th house stellium.
Okay. Oh, wow, interesting.
Yes. And then so it's interesting. My Gemini rising falls like right between the end of my 12th house and the beginning of my first.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's like so weird. It's like my Gemini ascendant and then my sun is like right there. Like right there in Cancer. So yeah, it's so funny. And then I have a Gemini stellium in the 12th house that like all just like leads into it. So I have to, oh my gosh, okay. I have to bring this home for you. I'm going to bring it home for you. I'm so glad you got into the astrology part of it, though. I knew where you were going with it. But what I wanted to say about the communication of it all, sometimes I do relate it back to being a Gemini rising, but it is very important for me to say I have to be so specific with my language just because I am a woman of color. I'm a Black woman of color. You know, as a kid especially, it's not something that I thought much about. I thought I was just like very emotional and just kind of like crazy with I'm a water sign, right? So I thought I was just very emotional and kind of like crazy with my words. And as I've gotten older, I've had to very much accept the reality of the world of like, it might be that, it probably is very much that, but it's also very much the fact that people don't necessarily want to understand me with communicating. So it's so funny. You can even ask Kimberly. In our earlier years in college, I would probably go to her all the time, just talking about random people, talking about how I just felt like I was misunderstood and they just couldn't seem to like, they didn't like how I felt about things. And I had to be way too specific about my feelings and like stuff like that. So I feel like I've learned the importance of words and just kind of not even being specific because I've had to be, but being specific because I want to be. And like, yes, it was something you were saying earlier. I think that when you really sometimes get to your feelings and how you actually feel about something, the verbiage that you'll use will be quite colorful outside of like mad, sad, and happy.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's not only, I think it's so interesting. I don't know if we got any of it on camera before, but I think you were talking about like kind of our superpowers and you were talking about my, so it was after you learned my signs and, you know, saying that I was here to kind of like not only receive kind of as a water sign, but also give as a Gemini and kind of the
Connect.
communication of it all.
A
Yes, to
connector
connect.
of goodwill that often includes language, but also the fact that it's like right there with your Cancer. Like Cancer is wisdom, nurture, like archetypal mama, and also business bitch, like
Yeah.
creators, like they are builders.
I look into kind of like the all kind of elements of myself and see how it all kind of like plays into one where I'm like, I don't think you know, I not even a curse. I think it's a blessing. I think I'm kind of meant to be as this person in this body, in this skin color, like having this experience and then kind of going out to educate people and speak my knowledge and
Yeah.
connect with others.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to also go back to the astrology thing. I knew you were going to the astrology thing, and we were talking about our different charts. I was talking about that dragonic chart.
Yeah.
This could blow your mind. So, kind of going back to the receiving of it all and the very natural receiving of it all. People, your dragonic chart, they say it's when the moon is at the highest point rather than the sun. And something that people will say, I guess, is that it's kind of like your soul before it was like touched or before like trauma came into kind of like play in XYZ. And in that chart, I am a Sagittarius sun, Sagittarius rising, Aries moon, hothead. And then I have a bunch of Scorpio placements in the personal placements. But Sagittarius is the Drucker is the ruling sign of Sagittarius. And it's a very, so I was going to say it's a planet of luck and receiving. And so I, especially as a kid, like I think back to it, I'm like, that completely adds up to me. And
Yeah.
especially, thinking about myself as a child and how kind of like free and kind of like free-spirited, carefree, and just kind of rambunctious and wild I was, like, yes, I look back to it and I'm like, it makes so much sense to me. I've always kind of been born into this like state of receiving.
Yeah.
And especially sometimes with astrology, I think it's so interesting. I think the more you learn about it, it's kind of about harnessing the energies. So I think now I'm just in a phase of adulthood where I can like sometimes harness that energy to like receive again or to just be in a permanent state of like reception and receiving and like, yeah, of course I'm gonna go out and like get this for myself. Why would I not? Like it's mine. It's destined, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And also just for anyone who is not astrologically inclined or who's like, oh my God, that's too woo. First of all, we love woo here. And second of all, it's all archetypal stories. We all have all 12 types. Those are within us. You know, energy between heavenly bodies is real. Like gravity is here. You know, we're staying on this planet for the most part. If you have learned how to levitate, then you're probably not listening to this because you're probably like next level already. But you know, I think that's so cool because Sagittarius also rules freedom and learning and adventure. And so that, you know, knowing that you are capable of receiving, well, okay, that's actually a perfect segue. How do you like to receive from others? Like, how do you like to be wooed?
so this is so perfect. Cause yes, we were talking about if my personal wooing was romantic or not.
Yeah.
I guess, like, I don't know. I was thinking about this before, maybe, like, honestly last week, just because, like, I'm in the phase of wanting to, like, date again, and maybe it's
Yeah.
not even wanting to date, maybe it's, like, wanting to have sex, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm in that kind of, I guess, romantic sphere, if you wanna call it, so I guess I was thinking of, like, what does romance look like to me? I don't think they're the same, you know? I think what you do for yourself is a little bit different, or how you woo yourself, I think I don't know if it shouldn't, but it doesn't have to look the same as how others woo you.
Yes, for me,
So
they feed different parts.
yes, right? I was gonna say, I don't know. I think thinking about it, I know ugh, I don't think I hate to say this. I think that sometimes I hate the reception of it maybe, but I maybe am just a little old-fashioned in the sense of that I always think about it. I like ch chivalry is not dead to me. I'm all about chivalrous and
Yeah.
chivalry act, first act and everything. So, for me, I guess it's one of those things where at first, when you first mention it, I am, like, very much wooed by the idea of somebody, like, opening my car door for me or opening the door for me. I'm very wooed by, like, the gentlemanliness of it all, I guess you could say. Let me think. How am I? I don't know. I am not someone who has a very long history or expansive history either of, like, dating or sex by any means
Mhm.
too. So, it's really interesting to kind of be in a phase or at an age where I am having to kind of, like, ask myself, like, not only how do I woo myself, but, like, how do others woo me? How am I receptive to what others think might be wooing to me? I don't know. I don't know.
I
Gosh.
love this. No, and the reason that I am suddenly so curious about these questions is because I'm like, the more that I talk to people about sex, the more the themes of connection are coming up, particularly what begins a connection. And what I'm realizing is, you know, I was talking to a former guest on the pod from a long time ago, Dr. Tim Norton. He's a sex therapist, and we were talking about projection. And he was kind of like breaking down a pattern he has noticed about just, you know, at the beginning of a relationship, people are projecting all over each other and not necessarily consciously because we're like doing it together. It's so exciting. And then we start to learn the actual, projection wears off. And then so it either results in, okay, we're going to get closer to what's actually here together. We're going to rupture and break up, go away, go our separate ways. Or many people who I hear from who are like not connected in their sex lives are just kind of going parallel, staying disconnected, but they're staying in the connection. They're not in connection, but in the relationship, and they don't talk to each other. And I realized that what I have unconsciously been attracted to or excited by is a little different from what I actually want myself to receive when I like take a step back and put on my self-love hat and think about consciously, like in partnership, what do I actually want to receive? And especially as online dating is difficult for many people in many different ways. This is something where I'm like, all right, how do we woo each other though? What does an irresistible invitation for you on a date sound like, And like, what is fun? What's fun to do with another person? Like for me, I will not watch TV or movies alone, but that is fun for me, especially if I'm with someone who I am like attracted to, because suddenly being at the movie theater, like I get to see a movie and participate in the general culture of public, which I forget to do by myself. I'm just reading books usually, or like talking to people about their feelings, but suddenly I'm like holding a hand, or a hand is on my thigh. And so then it's like this arousal state that's also releasing oxytocin. And I think that could be romantic. I'm not sure. But yeah. So it's just a brainstorm too. Noodle it up.
I don't mind, leading into romance, but sometimes you don't want to lean into, I guess, the grandeur and dramatics of romance. You want to keep it kind of like plausible.
I don't know. I'm okay with grand things. And I think that like as big as you want, stretch it all out. For me too, the grand romantic gestures, again, I'm still figuring out what romance is, but it's like,
Yeah.
if that's all it is, if it's only a gesture that is basically like if it's only the gesture, and if the big feeling is not, connected to it, for me that's not romantic. It's just a gesture and maybe manipulation. But I'm like, you know what? Like I do want someone to like whisk me away to be in one of those cabanas in a tropical place where there's a glass table and I can look at the fishies while I get fucked,
But seriously, no, I was thinking about it. I was gonna say, I don't know if it even matters, like what it is or where it starts for me, but it's one of those things where like I know it absolutely has to start with like, yeah, like a connection of sorts.
Yeah.
And it's odd because I think for me it does maybe start with conversation, but
Me
I
too.
feel like maybe I say that just because that's kind of well, like I don't know. I don't think I'm in the phase anymore of just like a wink and a nod and I'm running off with the dude, I guess is where I'm at. So like I guess for me it does start with like a conversation, but I don't know. It's hard because I guess I don't want to make it seem like I'll just go for any conversation, but when there's also like a connection and when
Yeah.
there's maybe something there to that's worth panning out. Like, yeah, that's worth kind of like sticking with and going back to.
Yeah, like a spark to explore. It'd be like, is this going to be a fun little, will it be a bonfire? Will it be a fireplace? Are we just lighting a candle? Like, what are we going to do with this spark,
Oh. I guess. So I guess maybe it starts there, and then for me, I'm just very I don't know, I'm very kind of a spontaneous person, and I like to do fun things, but maybe it's just kind of, again, what fun is defined to you, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
in the spirit of especially being a Gemini, we can kind of just chameleon and kind of do anything, and I find it very easy for me to be interested in things. My high school teachers always used to say I was very agile, so for
Mm,
me, it's very easy to maybe go into different places and assimilate, or even just kind of like find a natural interest, a curiosity, and learn. So I don't really think it matters to me like what you think is like fun and cool, but like show me your fun and cool and let's have like
mm,
fun, And then what connection yeah, what connection can either develop or continue developing. I don't know. I think maybe uh not the same type of woo, but like spirituality. I think I'm
yes.
just kind of I think in the spirit of being a Gemini as well. I think I'm just someone who believes that we can all connect somehow, some way. It definitely, and maybe that's more the water sign in me as well. Like we're definitely kind of more meant to connect as humans, though. There's no way there's this million many of us on the planet. We're not meant to connect. It's just kind of a matter of getting whether it's finding it or getting to what to connect about, it's just kind of a matter of delving, exploring that territory maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid to explore that territory. So for me, I guess like, yeah, it's one of those things where, if there's a connection, you can show me, your interest, what you like, whatever, and I will, I don't know, I think I will attempt, or maybe I'm just able to find a way to connect with people through it.
What I'm hearing too is it's sort of not so much about the specific thing, activity, or item as it is like, do you have a spark with that person and can you communicate about it and can they invite you into their world in a way that is perhaps meaningful and like maybe a little adventure? Like, I think every person, for me, every connection with a new person is a new adventure. And so I'm just, and everyone has their own, oh, here's a question, love languages. Like, what love languages resonate the most with you? And just for people who aren't familiar, we have acts of service, gifts. The official thing is words of affirmation. I like to say words of connection because for me, it's not about receiving compliments, but I need meaningful words, physical touch, and gifts. That's my last one, so that's the one I forget the most.
I think mine, it's so funny. I don't know if you've ever seen that like meme that was like your love languages are like the two things you didn't get as a child or whatever.
I haven't seen that. Oh, that's so funny. That's not true for me though. Like physical touch is my number one, and I like my family is very cuddly. Like we're in platonic sweet ways, but I'm like I learned that touches are nice. So like that's my top.
I think it's very true for me, unfortunately, I should say. But
Okay.
mine, I think my top, I don't know if I would say one is higher than the other, but
Yeah.
physical touch is definitely one of them. I am very much someone who like loves to give a hug. I realize that a lot
Me
about
too.
myself. I think sometimes I can maybe like read the room and tell that that's maybe not the vibe for a lot of
Okay.
people though. So I'm very good at kind of like, it's not a big deal sort of a thing, but like I am someone who like I like to give a hug. I like to receive a hug. Why
Yeah.
not?
Same. I'll walk in like with a brand new person. I'll be like, "Hello," and like if they have their hand out, I'll shake my hand. I'll be like, "Do you like hugs? I like hugs." Like I'll just volunteer that, and then if they say yes, then I really squeeze them.
And then the other one I think I do think it's acts of service, but I think it's one of those things where like I was the younger child and the younger sibling, but I had kind of a lot of freedom as the younger sibling sort of a thing. So for me, I think I was very individual, or what I had was hyper individualistic as a child. I just had a hyper individuality problem. So I'm very used to kind of doing things on my own for myself. I remember one of our teachers in college used to say I was very self-sufficient. She was surprised I had an older brother. I was so self-sufficient. So I think it's acts of service, just kind of by matter of maybe like always just doing for myself. And I never realized that as a kid. I never thought that much about it, nor did I, think it was like a bad thing. But like, yeah, I think it's
Okay.
I think all of them are important in a sense.
Of course.
But I think those are the two that I guess like, yeah, maybe seemingly will resonate with me the most. I guess it's hard thinking about it because nobody's ever actually like done it sort of a thing.
Okay, that was
why
my next question is like reflecting on relationships. Have you had anyone kind of like do a gesture or action or activity that has really just like swooned you?
No, so I think that's kind of the problem too. Like I was
Okay.
saying, I'm very open about the fact that I haven't really dated a lot, and I will say I feel like a lot of my dating experiences can be summed up to just like situationships sort of a
Yeah.
thing. But I'm someone who looks at like not necessarily love, but just kind of relationships, especially kind of as a whole. So sometimes it's not just my relationship with someone like physically or sexually in an experience or romantically in experience. Sometimes I'll relate things to friendships. Sometimes I'll relate things to like mentor mentee type of things, if you want to call it that. So in that sense, like, no, when I kind of look at it on a grand scale, it's so interesting to look back at and then like, yeah, think of that meme of like, it's the two things that you didn't receive as a child. I was very, fortunate to be receptive of people's like knowledge and kind of skills and like talents, like whatever in that kind of range. But I don't know if sometimes, not to say like these people never hugged me or anything like that, because obviously definitely did. But sometimes I look back and recognize where like I didn't, and it's not just those two in particular, it's kind of all five of the love languages where I'm like, I don't know if I've ever been in a situation where I felt like I was really receiving of
Yeah.
maybe those two in particular, or even maybe all five. Words of
Yeah.
affirmation or words of affirmation is the one that maybe I like kind of like stop on because, in certain situations, it's very obvious that I'm being maybe commended or complimented on things. But I think that's different than, being told. I think words of affirmation sometimes is a little bit more less compliments and maybe a little, yeah, like self-affirming, I guess you could say. It's really supposed to be, I don't even know how to say it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's like the words that I might need to feel validation in whatever realm those words are
Yeah,
pointed.
it's different than like a compliment.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like a
So it's one
satisfaction.
exactly. So it's one of those things where like, yeah, I guess sometimes it's sad to say, it's hard to look back at and realize, but yeah, like I look back on it and I'm like, I don't know if I've ever felt like I've been in a position, whether it was, yeah, mentor, mentee, my mother to me, to my mom, my dad to me, sort of a thing of friendship or whatever, wherever, where I really kind of felt that I had that experience of being heard in that way or loved in any of those ways. It is definitely something that I, like, seek out and search out for now as a grown adult, and, I will say, like, now I definitely have, like, a friend who not to sound like I'm like, I don't have any friends, but, like, 2 friends or the kinda group of friends I have now,
Yeah.
obviously, the people I collect now, I would say, are definitely better and very good at kind of, like, providing me, whether it's one of those 5 love languages or more specific, like, love languages or anecdotes that I need, definitely now, but, like, no, I don't know if
Yeah.
in the past to really say I had that experience.
I mean, it's beautiful to reflect on all of it because also how exciting. Like how exciting that you have this level of consciousness in a moment where you're like, actually, I'm open to some companionship. Let's see what might be useful here. And also, when we reflect on what we just learned about you in the previous little set of questions, like, thank creation that you're so good at giving stuff to yourself. Do you know what I mean? And what a beautiful way. I think for me, one of the things that I have realized in my own relational life is like, they've got to at least treat me as good as I treat myself. And most people don't treat themselves as well as I treat myself. And I don't mean things here. I mean the way that I treat my body, the way that I talk to myself, the way that I, bathe myself, the way that I enjoy life and appreciate. And so I've realized in recent dating experiences that I am so good at filling myself up. I can sometimes unconsciously be like a container that someone else is trying to stick a straw in and, take out all of the energy that I've been, and I'm like, wait, no, the whole point is supposed to be like an exchange where we both feel uplifted.
Yes.
Like where the
Yeah.
parts are greater than the sum of the, okay. And so like, thank goodness that you have all this experience. How exciting.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I care about myself a whole hell of a lot. Like, that's one of those things where it's like, I
Yes.
wanna always side eye a friend of like, "Go ask her how much I care about myself." Like, "Go ask her. She knows how much I care about myself." So it's not that I don't care about you at all, right? I just don't care about you more than me. But if you also know how much I care about myself, how much I seemingly, like, pour into myself, how much time I seem to be put into all of this, how much do you then think I care about you, right? It's
Yes.
like, it's not like I'm saying I don't care about you at all, which is what my mom's whole thing on it, but I'm
Right.
like, "You're not listening to me though," right? It's like, I just don't care about you more than me. And I
Yeah.
do have to care about me more than I care about you. Because
Yes.
unfortunately, if I care about you more than I care about myself, we're gonna meet this point where, like, I'm gonna start to deteriorate because I'm
Yes.
so kind of like one of those things where, like, I pour into myself so much because, I want to, but I like to think that because I pour into myself so much, I'm able to kind of go out there and be of service or be
Yes.
available to others. And
Yes.
it's so much easier to like sit back and be like, well, I took care of myself. I took my time and did what I needed to do. And now I can go out into the setting and just be who I need or who you need me to be. I can be here for you. We can be here together or like whatever. But like, yes, it's like, it's not like I don't care about people, but I care about you just as much as I care about myself, just not more than I care about myself.
I love that so much because it's the airplane emergency thing, right? Like if the oxygen masks
Mhm.
drop, you literally must put yours on first or you will not be able to help anyone else. And it is the same thing. And I know that our society really, really pushes this like others above self thing in so many ways. And I think it has some, religious hooks in there that have gotten into a lot of us. And also like that, I know many people have reflected to me since I started prioritizing my personal health, which looks like sleep, which looks like taking a bath, which looks like sticking to only eating foods that do not make me sick, because like I will get sick if I have alcohol or sugar. And sometimes people are like, "Ah, okay, and it's like, no, I'll get very sick. And they're like, you're so lucky, you're healthy. And I'm like, it's, in some ways it's choices and priorities, but it's like, I do all of those things so that I can be resourced enough to go connect with other people and to meet them where they are at. Like since I started sleeping properly and like gaining awareness, like first of all, I can learn so much better. And second of all, when someone else is having their like, I can sort of just like be there with them in it. And then, I can reflect on like, do I need to stay in this connection? Is this helpful? All of those next pieces. But certainly in my work, like if I'm working with someone on relationship stuff or working with them in a hyper personal way or as a photographer or whatever, I'm able to just be there for them. And so I think that is beautiful and healthy. And, I can understand why it might be hard for a Libra to understand. And also as a first house sun, like that makes perfect sense, even or as a double Sagittarius, like that's, either way, either chart you look at.
I can definitely I might have made myself look like an ass with that one, but I'll stand by it.
Sagittarius is my favorite sign, and I'm Sag rising in the normal Placidus chart. And so like, I think that freedom and adventure and pursuit of knowledge and learning is built into the human experience, and that's what I hope to foster here. Okay, broadening out of like relationship stuff specifically, although you can take this wherever you want, I just want to hear a few words on like, what do you love? Like, what are things that bring you joy? What makes you go, woo?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like I would be remiss to not talk about my fucking dog. I love him. What a little that's like the first thing that like brings me so much joy. It's so corny, it's so lame because I definitely never thought I was gonna be that person, but there are just like moments where like, yeah, I feel like I'm like sitting at work and I'm like, I'm so excited to go home and like walk my dog, which sounds insane. But like, so he's like probably the first thing that just will immediately kind of like give me love, spark me some joy. I'm like you. I love food. Like, yummy, yummy, yummy. Food to me is like such a huge like importance in life and romance. I think it's just an unweighted kind of thing. I'm really big on like the arts and it like again, I'm just kind of film, TV, and music maybe predominantly, but like I can branch out. I'm not the strongest reader. I've been trying to get more into books this year, but like I try and read books more. I try and go to the museums, any kind of real like range and field of art. I'm like not good at painting, but I still kind of try and whatnot. So any art thing's gonna get me excited. I like being outside. I like hiking, and I would say working out, but I do like probably not. Probably like
What about moving your body? When I replaced working out in my brain with I will move my body today, I can always move my body. I cannot always work out every day. I can always at least get in a 15-minute walk.
I think that's like such a better way to put it too. Cause like, yes, and I will also do something like yoga, whether it's indoor or outdoor, I'll do some sort of yoga thing. And like, yes, if I can move my body in kind of one of those particular ranges, if I can go outside, especially and get like fresh air, I'm someone who I think has to like, I think I have to sometimes walk my dog in the morning so I can kind of like get the fresh air, connect to kind of everything going on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But just biologically, literally all humans do need fresh air. I read a statistic that like we stay inside 90% of the time. Like people who work in offices spend 90% of their days indoors. We're not built for that.
No, at all. And I was gonna say, like, I remember one of the greatest tips I had ever been given when I was like super kind of down in the dumps was somebody was like, go out if if you're the type of person who especially walks in the morning, go outside without your headphones, without your device, and just go walk around and like hear. It was the
Here,
crazy.
and no sunglasses either. Get morning sunlight in your eyes and evening sunlight ideal.
And it would be crazy to be up at like 7 in the morning and just hear birds, see
Yes.
sunlight.
Yes.
Yes, it's like such a so being outside and especially like yes, fresh air is just such a like huge thing to me that I just like love, love, love.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so transitioning, we're going to start talking about more adult topics here. So first, I would love to hear, what do you need to feel connected enough to another human being to want to get physically intimate?
So for me, I'm very open about the fact I just not really dated a lot. I I shouldn't say I've certainly had sex, but I've had sex. I've had sex partners or sexual partners, like whatever you want to call it, especially in my kind of like mid 20s as I've got like transitioned and kind of become more adult or whatever. Something that I've looked back on and really recognized was that I don't think that I've ever really had a sexual experience in which I felt like that person really, like, in particular, wanted to have sex with me.
Mm.
And it's not even necessarily built in by relationships, I think some people would assume, that if you are in a relationship, like, yeah, that person actively wants to engage in having sex with you. Whether it is or it isn't, like, I don't think it is personally, but regardless of that, I haven't really been in a relationship to even say so. It just kind of felt like, I was anyone to them at that moment.
Oh my God, this pokes me so hard because I feel that way so strongly. Some people here know that I'm an artist. I'm also a sex worker. And literally, the hottest thing to me about being a sex worker is that there is utter clarity that that person is desiring an interaction with me. And then I feel really good about, I know my job, and now I can give the full force of focus of my attention and desire.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about freaking them out with it, and I need a good reason to fuck someone. Like, I need a good reason.
Exactly. And there's something like attractive in that and knowing that you're wanted and knowing that you're desired, like specifically desired
Yes.
by someone in that
Yes.
way. I've just never had that experience. So for me, especially kind of now, I think I shouldn't say back in the day, but like, years ago when I was like, yeah, in college and kind of in my early 20s, I think it was not necessarily anything, but it definitely kind of was a situation in a case of like opportunity, I guess I would say. One of those things where, sex and dating is just as an appearance game, it's a visual game, and that can kind of look and be different for everybody. I am not necessarily the most fortunate in always being, I don't want to say being picked, but being the one necessarily that like people are maybe the first interested in or that people really seek out to want to have interactions with or even so much as talk to sometimes. So for me, a lot of the time it was not necessarily like not random opportunity and chance,
Yeah.
let me not say that. But like oftentimes they were friends. I hate to say that, but oftentimes they were friends.
No,
but like
no.
yeah,
All of this, there's no judgment here because literally most of my sex, especially like before becoming a sex worker, like it was all opportunistic. I slept with most of my friends who wanted to sleep with me because I at least was like, well, they're safe and theoretically they'll like me enough. And then I was like, there's something missing from these connections and I'm not sure what it is. Hence all of these conversations.
like that's kind of just like what it has been and what it was like just kind of like, well, they wanted to have sex with me, so I'm having sex with them sort of a thing. And so yeah, and that's kind of what it was back in the day. But like I guess now looking at it, for me it's like maybe I should say it's not obvious and overt maybe to other people, but to me it's like a very kind of like obvious like notion and desire that I am like wanted in that way and that somebody
Yes.
very much wants to like have sex with me. It's not that they want to have sex, period. It's that they want to have sex with me.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it's kind of hard because maybe it is like, what does that look like? And even then it can look different to kind of like everybody.
And what does it feel like?
Exactly. So I think for me though, that is kind of like to answer your question, like I haven't had sex with anybody in a while. I'm not shy to talk about it or anything. But that is why though, it's one of those things where it's like I am waiting for someone, whether it's by chance of a relationship or not, like it doesn't have to be. But it's one of those things where it's like I'm waiting for someone that I actually feel like a connection with, someone that, they don't have to necessarily be like overly interested in me, but they have to give a shit on whether I live or die. Like, so like some people you can absolutely tell they don't really care, But it's one of the things where it's like somebody that is very intentful and very intentionally, wanting to have sex with me and wanting to like be in that experience with me. That's what will have me like anything.
I'm like, let me spread these. Let me put them wide open. Okay. And thank you for sharing all of that. I know it's vulnerable stuff we get into here, but I have been thinking so much about these little nuances of connection and intimacy, in part because I've had so many people ask me about how to make a connection. And I've been noticing this pattern in my own experience that when I invite the other person's intimacy, like when I invite them to want me, and that I will say, it's emotional labor. It is work, and like I'm not saying women should be responsible for emotional labor. I am saying though that like I have a gift that I'm happy to share, and so when I have lovers who seem nervous to show their desire, like I've learned too that lots of penis owners are nervous to show their desire, even if they very clearly have it. Like they only want to show me the physical part.
Yes.
Because if they show me any more, then I might reject them and they would feel less powerful and they would get hurt. So I'm realizing that there's so much happening where globally we're feeling disconnected. I think part of it has to, these are all fresh noodles on screens and stuff, but I'm just noticing that oftentimes I am not having the experience of feeling deeply desired by people who I know care for me and do desire me. And I also now know what it feels like to have someone deeply desire me, and have in the context of there's money involved. And it's so interesting because in sex work situations, people that I have worked with open up real deep in a way that I'm figuring out how to invite in a romantic connection. And so it's interesting because I'm like, all right, so there's a little safety bucket there. How do we create that safety bucket? Like, what do I look for in regular life, So I'm always just curious about those connection elements. Okay, so what else is sexy to you?
I try and always think about like what actually is versus like what I want, right? I feel like it's so easy to just kind of go for like physical things because it's just always the first surfacely kind of like tangible thing.
That's good
But
too,
that is
though.
like different though than what I actually kind of like want and resonate with, which is yes, something that I've kind of had to learn to like acknowledge and kind of take in. So I think intellect is sexy. I think that being smart is sexy, not being a smart ass. I think being a smart ass can be sexy in the right moments, right? But I think like yes, being smart and having not even an education, having knowledge of something though, having knowledge of things, whatever it may be, and knowing how to flex it, I think that's hot.
Well, just for me too, there's a very specific caveat of like, how do I say this? Sometimes people flex their knowledge in a way where I think maybe they're just insecure and looking for like points, but there's almost like a cynicism or a condescension that comes with the way they share their knowledge. Whereas when someone is sharing from a place of like passion because they love this thing that they know about and they are like generous with their knowledge and optimistic, and it's like in conversation, not like, did I earn enough points to be the best one in the room? Like that I kind of think is like a distinction in the intellect for me.
I was gonna say that's a very good and important distinction to make. I very much someone who's not, like non-judgmental. That's what I should say. I like someone who's like smart and knowledgeable, but who also knows how to kind of like educate others in a very like kind way, and like not in a very non-condescending way.
Yeah. It's like compassion. It's like compassionate intellect or something.
I'm so glad you said that. Honestly, what's like super hot to me? Emotional intellect. Like
Yes.
emotional awareness and gosh, patience. I want to, and truthfully, I do think like kind of like emotional patience, to be honest with you. Like, I think it was kind of going back to meeting people where they're at. I think that is very much kind of like a skill to learn. And it's kind of a skill, emotional patience and emotional intelligence.
Practicing.
Not everybody really knows what that means. Like, I definitely finally knew what it meant until I really woke up one day and I was like, no, I know what that means. Especially, I'm straight, so especially out of like a guy, wishful thinking, but like especially out of a man, I think it's like very attractive in this day and age. I think kindness, I don't know if I think it's like sexy or it turns me on, but in a way it like does like very genuine
Me.
kindness.
I
Yeah,
literally
like
identify as a kind sexual.
Yeah, like, I think it can, like, you can tell when somebody is truly just has, like, the, like, bone to be kind, and, like, it's just a natural kind of, like, reflex for them, and they don't expect anything back. Like, I think, like, I don't know if I think it's seldom, maybe I do think it's seldom, and that's why it is
Mm.
kind of, like, seldom and sexy, but, like, when you see it, you kind of recognize it, and it is very, attractive.
I hope I have a theory that I hope is true. I think everyone is kind in their core being. I
For
think
sure.
many people have been, it can be a capital or lowercase t, traumatized in ways that cause them to hide their kindness very deep because they are afraid of being hurt. This is my theory.
I very much agree. I think we are all naturally instilled to be I don't know if I think we're all naturally instilled to be good, but I do think we're all just kind of instilled to be content, not a good bone, not a bad bone sort of a thing. And life and situations very much, yeah, just kind of shape our being in things. But I don't think, yes, I was going to say, I'm very much in agreement with that. I think people have a natural reflex to be kind that's just been lower T or capitalized T, like traumatized out of them.
Yeah. When you think about being with another person, what are the ways? This could be physical, this could be emotional. I like to bring all of it. I'm a big fan of physical details per your comfort, but it's like whatever comes up for you.
I for me, like, I think sex is just a very, like, emotional and very passionate experience for me. I won't say it's a spiritual experience, maybe that's really a lot to say,
It is
but,
for me. Like even in the most casual little quickies, I'm like, whoa. But also because I have wild experiences in my brain that are, I think, bouncing off my partner's energy, and I'm now learning how to create that in solo experiences for myself on different days.
for me, and I realized it way too late in life, like, sex is a really big energy exchange. I can
Yes.
very confidently say there have been moments where I've definitely had sex with somebody, got out of it, and was like, "I don't know what the fuck you just, like, like, what's going on?" But, like, I can feel it, and then I was very affected, like, for a while thereafter sort of a thing. So for me, sex is a very big energy exchange. I think that kind of looking at it like that and maybe kind of, like, looking back on myself too, it's always very much framed kind of my sexual experiences in the sense of that, like, yes, they were all kind of opportunity, but they were also opportunity kind of based on my own like want and desire. It wasn't like, oh, finally I found someone to have sex with, so I had sex with them.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of sometimes one of those things where it's like, well, I kind of finally trust this person and like, yeah, I guess I want to have sex, like
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's to me that's opportunistic, but it's like the little needle has to get to the yes point. Like it's like what
yeah,
flips it? Like what flips that connection? For me, it's often safety. It's often feeling respect and like valued on a basic human level. Like those are kind of the three, and now I'm like, is it something new? Like is it something and also someone else's ability to hold space for me? Because I unless we're doing a very specific negotiated role play, like I don't get turned on by being teacher.
yeah, I know what you mean. There still needs to kind of be just, like, an emotional connection. I feel like my big thing is I don't need like, I am not someone who only needs to have sex in, like, relationships, so there doesn't need to be this whole kind of, like, maybe formal establishment there, but, like, yeah, you wanna know that, like, somebody kind of cares for you and that you're safe in that situation. I remember you just said that a second ago, and so, I don't know, to me, those are, like that's always gonna, like, get me really going, I feel like, is when I can tell, like, somebody really cares for me and really wants to, like, see me in a safe place and kind of, like, a safe position. I think it is so underrated and understated, but, like, foreplay is an absolute kind of must for me. Now I know where I was going. No. I have to have an emotional connection and kind of mental stimulation, I think is kind of where I wanted to maybe bring that back to. Because yes, sex is a big kind of energy exchange for me. And so I think sex is meant to be fun. I think it's meant to be playful. I think it's meant to be passionate. I think you're meant to literally walk out of it having like had a fun time. Literally like you just got back from the playground. Like, oh my God, that was so
Agree.
much fun.
I call sex the grown-up playground for adults.
For me, it's one of those things where it's like, I need to have I think it's supposed to be kind of like just as like, I don't know if I wanna say like mentally engaging and stimulating, but like there are so many things that kind of go into having, I guess, maybe having fun in that manner and like maybe the service that you can provide, the good time you can provide, if you wanna call it that. that like, yes, like, yeah, deserve to be explored. So for me, like, I think it's all the energies that go into it is maybe kind of what I'm trying to maybe relate it back to. So it's not just like the physical energy, it's like the mental stimulation of it too, as well. Like being mentally engaged with each other and knowing that you're kind of like mentally attracted to each other. I think that's kind of the whole thing with like the maybe like my attraction to it, intelligence and everything. It's what you were saying with like being knowledgeable about something and knowing how to like confidently flex it without being rude or condescending, and knowing how to talk about something and like kind of, yes, passionately engage with something like that. I think like on a mental level, when you can engage with somebody like that on that level, it just really kind of like thickens the moment and really like adds like some tension and some
Yeah.
yumminess, like that already kind of maybe like the physical, especially, yeah, the physical energy that's probably already kind of like permeating and existing. And then I think from an emotional element too, like, yeah, being emotionally like engaged and like connected to someone is always to me just really gonna like really, really, really like, I don't know, I guess drive sex home for me. It's that like
Yeah.
emotional connection, and it doesn't have to be love, but there is just something in like, knowing that you're cared for and knowing that you're safe, emotionally like safe in a situation like that. That is just so gets me going.
I totally hear that. I would love to hear some specifics, and I do want to get to the physical, but I want to hear specifics about how that mental and emotional piece can show up during sex. Like, do you like words during sex? Do you prefer like silence, gazes, all of it? And I know it's different with every person because there's different energies. Like, I will talk my mouth off to some people. I'll only say the dirtiest things to some people, and some people I'm starting to be able to tell they just need quiet. They need the physical. So like
Yeah.
how are some ways that the like mental energy has shown up for you in like the throes of passion when you're with someone?
So I'm definitely words of affirmation person in the bedroom.
I love that.
It's interesting because I guess, like, I'm not good at it. I don't think I would say I'm good at it, nor do I feel like I've had some, like, really great, amazing experience in it, but I do think I like and am interested in, like, dirty talk.
Yeah.
I'm not it's, like, so weird. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not good at it. I don't know, especially maybe out of the moment, what I would say. But I feel like especially in the moment, there's very few things that are like that to say, and you know what to say in the moment to kind of like turn someone on and kind of like get them going. But one thing I really, yeah, I was gonna say, I love compliments. Like I
Mm.
genuinely love to be told I'm doing a good job. Like
Yeah.
I think
Same.
I put it your
I
I
was
think I
gonna
answered.
say, yeah, I want to hear more about the part where you love compliments and getting that. Like, yeah, like a appreciation kink. Like,
I don't know if I explicitly put that. I think I couldn't remember if I put good girl kink or something, but I do think I have a bit of an appreciation kink where, like, yes, I genuinely love to be told I'm like, especially if I'm writing someone, I definitely like to be told I'm doing a good job. First of all,
yes,
writing people is hard.
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
But, like, I legitimately, I just, like, I like it. It can sometimes, especially, like, I think pacing is really important in sex. I think it's very understated. Pacing is very important in sex. Like, sometimes, that again, it's like that emotional reassurance that sometimes can just be, like, very nice. Also, it's just, like, very hot to know that I'm doing something that's, like, turning you on or that you like. That's, like, satisfactory to you. Yeah, right? I definitely wanna hear you back sort of thing, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like, yes, I was gonna say, like, I very much enjoy moaning. I don't mind moaning, like,
Oh
especially from,
yeah.
like, a partner. I feel like somebody once told me that, like, guys are embarrassed to make noise during sex, and it's like, make noise. Like, that to me is, like, very attractive. It's nice to know that it's a response as well. Like, I don't think people recognize that, like, it's like a verbal and kind of like an emotional cue that, like, things are either going right or going wrong somehow. So, like, I personally like that. I think it's very, like, attractive and very much a turn on.
First, I'll say, feel you so hard because I'm not a person at this point in my life that will like get nervous during sex. Like, I know how to kind of like hang and explore and check in. However, there are some instances where I'm with someone, and especially when suddenly I feel like they shut down, like like a invisible curtain has dropped between us, and they are silent, and I can't read any body cues. Like reading social cues in a physical form is something that I've been working on and studying. Like it does not come natural. And I'm not one of those people that can like look at someone like I could never be a con artist because I'm like I have no idea what's going on for them. Like I have to really work at it.
Yeah.
And I also have started basically prepping my lovers ahead of time by being like, I love knowing what you love. If I'm doing something that you like, I'd like to know it. If you want something different, please ask me. I may not say yes in the moment, but I'd like to know what's going on for you. I love moans, I love noises, and then I also like I also warn them that I'm not really sure what's going to come out of my mouth. But like if I'm talking too much and it throws them off, because I've had some guys who are penis nervous, a lot of them. And I also am like, I love it when your cock goes up and down. I love it hard. I love it soft. Like sometimes I have really interesting orgasms on a semi-soft cock, but so often people have had experiences where their lovers get mad at them if they lose their hard on or something, or they take it personally and it turns into this spiral of mutual anxiety. And that's like not very sexy. So to go back to the dirty talk part, are there any like words that you love to receive or that like turn you on to even say?
I do think like good girl is probably the woman that like very much will probably like get me going, that like very much turns me on. Anytime like I can get you to swear probably or like cuss like a fuck, shit, anything like that, like like always a good sign to me. One thing that I did want to say, it's so interesting because it's not really like dirty talk, but kind of going back to what you said of like I am the same way where I'm like I aim to please personally, like so I want to know what you like sort of a thing. And tell me what you want. You can tell it can be before or after, but I'm also someone who I've said it before. I think there is something like so hot in being able to like instruct someone to like you or to give you what they need sort of a thing, especially active moment to be able to kind of like confidently, calmly, like instruct, whether it's verbally or like whatever. It's just, I think it can just be so like, whew, like, whew, that. And I was going to say, it's not really a form of dirty talk, but if I am like doing something and while I'm doing it, you're kind of like, giving me instructions and adjustments and, complimenting me throughout the way sort of a thing. And you're still staying turned on in that moment. Like, yeah.
It's so hot. Also, because then it's like I have instructions to be an even gooder girl, like it's like, and I want to also get feedback because I have interviewed and spoken to and slept with so many people who are like, you can just tell.
Yeah.
And you know what I've learned from interviewing and talking to and sleeping with so many people? Sometimes you can't tell. Sometimes they can't tell. Sometimes humans are so afraid of being kicked out of their tribe, the social group of acceptance that causes us to feel like we're not going to die. They won't. They will just let you think that you are correct. And that is missed connection. So for me, like dirty talk and verbal stuff is so hot because it creates this connection. I remember the first time I became terrified of dirty talk. I was with a lover who was a friend and he was hot and I always had a crush on him. And I had like whatever tried to hit on him and he's like, do you know that this is like what people do when they're like hitting on someone? Because like he had instructed me in lots of social things and I was like looking to him, he was a little bit older and I was like looking to him for advice and I was like, yes, because you told me and I was trying to hit on you, and then we did end up fucking. And I remember just like out of nowhere in sex, and this was at a time in my life where I was not very sexually confident because I didn't have the level of experience I wanted. He was like, dirty talk me. And he just said dirty talk, like was like, go. And I was like, and then I was so stage frightened and I also had no experience. I had absolutely no experience. So like my mojo got killed. And then he sort of like jokingly like teased me about it and I just felt horrible. And then it took us like another almost 8 years to like ever fuck again because I just didn't. And part of me now is like, I don't know. But I just remember not only was I caught off guard, we were not emotionally connected enough and it was not a safe enough container for me to feel comfortable saying anything, and all he could have done to make a difference instead of being like dirty talk me would have been like Tell me what feels good right now. Tell me
Yeah,
what
right.
turns you on about me. Tell me what you want to experience. Tell me what you're, like, give me a specific instruction, So,
Yeah.
so
I was
that's,
gonna say maybe that's too like the dirty talk that I'm like looking for. I think that's like maybe what's kind of hard is like, it's like, well, what kind of dirty talk do you like? And it's like I definitely have an idea, but in terms of experience, like I wouldn't pull from any of my other experience and say like, yeah, that's
yeah,
the dirty talk I like. Like, yeah,
same.
it's I was gonna say too, like I feel like there's such a difference between like what we know to be dirty talk versus like actual like, yeah, like passionately or like earnestly and honestly like desiring your partner and saying what you desire about them. I think and telling them like, yeah, what you like and how you like it. I'm like, that is such a different like sentiment and it has so many like, yes, I think emotional, like maybe not emotional feelings, but it definitely has like emotion behind it
And
that like,
emotional safety for me to
yeah,
play with them. Yeah. Yeah. And it is so different person to person. Like every person's energy is different. And then it's different when it's with my energy. It's so different. It's a different alchemical experience in dirty talk.
I think that's what can be scary about it too, yeah, because like, yeah, looking back on it, it's like, yeah, I've had experiences in it, but I remember like, yeah, kinda similar to you, like, I wasn't necessarily put on the spot, but, like, I would never say some of that stuff again because I didn't really know what I was saying in the first place, I was just kind of, like, saying it, and I'm like, it's so different versus, yeah, very passionately saying, like, what you like, what you want from someone. I remember someone too said it's like I think I saw it on Reddit. I think it was either Ask Women or Ask Men or maybe Dating. It's one of the Reddit threads. I just happened to see, like, either a comment in there or maybe it was the prompt, but they were saying it was a guy and he was saying, like, it is very understated just, like, how sexy it is to know that somebody, like, specifically wants you, and I think very specifically, he was saying, like, it is so sexy to know that someone specifically, like, wants to suck your dick or that, like, a girl wants to, like, suck your dick, like, that
Yeah.
is so hot. And it's like, yeah, there is something very, like, attractive and very just being able to, like, speak your desires about another person or, like, to have that, like, connection and kind of, like, safeness to say, like, what you want them to do to you, what you wanna experience with them, like, whatever, like,
Yeah.
ugh.
It is sexy. I also know that early on, when I didn't have a lot of experience, reading those sentiments or hearing that kind of like in the ether put so much pressure on me because I didn't know what I wanted. I was in the early stages of exploring, and also what I want changes so drastically depending on the context. And I heard so many things of like, well, if you aren't having orgasms in bed, like you need to start with yourself so you know what you want. And I'm like, well, I'm really good at making myself come and I don't know how to translate that. And it's not like there are very many places in public where I think we see good examples of how to develop our sexual selves. There are lots of examples we can find, but in my own explorations, there's not like here are some options of how to develop yourself. There's a lot of like courses you can buy. There's some porn
Yeah.
you can watch, and then there's like a whole mess of dating that can happen, but there's no kind of like social norm because of the amount, I think, of shame and just confusion people have around it. So it's like that's like a piece that's always come up for me. I would love to hear physical specifics of what you're into and or what you are curious about. So we know that sometimes you're on top. Is that a favorite
Yeah.
position? Like, do you have favorite positions? Do you have favorite sensations to receive? Like, tell us, get into some physical, be as specific
Okay.
and detailed as you wish.
I will try. I was gonna say, I don't know why I'm acting so, like, shy and Mother Mary. I used to joke with people that I'm, like, very Midwestern, so I'm very much like, "You guys should go out there and be as slutty as possible. I am right here if you need me, but you go out absolutely nasty, and I'm right here." I do think that I can be, like, very traditional, but I do think I am the, like, what is it, like, lady in the street and a but a freak in the sheet sort of a thing. Like, I can get down, I can get fun, I can have some fun. I haven't sort of a thing. Like, it's all been kind of vanilla and some, like, basic, but I like to have fun. I
So
think I
far.
can get
Yeah.
for me, though, like, yeah, I feel like, especially starting out, I was, like, super into being on top. I don't know if that's still a thing for me now. I like being on top more for, like, his pleasure, and I definitely think that I will I feel like that is my moment to be a superstar and feel super, like, hot about myself. I don't know if I always feel great in that position though sometimes. My favorite, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I should say it's my favorite now and forever, but it's probably been my like hard favorite forever now is dog, which like,
Oh,
yeah. But I think you can get like really passionate in doggy that just people don't really kind of explore. It's not just, it can be kind of, I think, emotionless, but I think that there's a lot of kind of like, there's like, you can like reach underneath and grab boobs sort of a thing. You can push from
yeah.
behind. You can vote from the ear. It's like there's a lot to kind of be, and that is such a, I think great position for women, especially. Like there's just like a lot to be experienced there that I feel like is very underrated. So yes, doggy's my favorite personally. I'm very open about the fact that I really do like to suck dick. I do. I will say that I think like for me, it definitely is like better and just kind of like better. It probably just has probably more effort put into it when it's somebody that I'm like connected to and that I actually like want to be like sucking their dick. Again, kind of like that
Yeah.
difference between the emotional connection and not.
Totally.
But
I'm like, wow, what a surprise. I'm going to have more fun sucking your dick when I feel like you care about me a little bit, and then I'm going to be excited to please you. Like, that's just basic. I mean, honestly, that's like work psychology. They're like, bosses, you want to be a good boss? Get those people emotionally invested. I'm like,
oh gosh, I love when sex, I guess, feels like a warm hug in a lot of ways. To me, kind of always being physically connected in some ways, just like always really good. I love like the physicalness of sex and just kind of like the touching and the heavy petting and like the whatever.
yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I'm not feel like there's nothing that I'm like I guess maybe the big stuff that I'm not big on is maybe any like butt stuff.
Okay.
I've never really done any of it before, but I've also said to people, like, I'm not necessarily shy. Well, I'm shy to it because I've never done any of it before, but I've
Yeah.
also never found someone that I'm like safe to do that stuff with
Yeah.
before. I think that if the situations were or are different, I'd be kind of open to it or willing to work towards it, but that's a different thing for another time.
I totally feel that. I'm like, they have to be experienced, they have to really like it. And also, like, because for me, it is so deeply dirty and intimate. And I'm just like, my first, I tried it a lot though. I was always anal curious. Like, I tried it so many times before it was good. But I had a partner that finally made me feel safe because I was like, oh, I don't know, I might get embarrassed. And he was like, what if you never had to be embarrassed in front of me? And I was like, yep, that's what I need for butt fucking. That is what I need.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I just never felt emotionally safe with anyone to do it, but I
Yeah.
think that I would sort of a thing, like, yes, and what I was going to say is that I feel like I'm one of those people who in a general sense is maybe that, like, well, I'll try it, like, once, to say I, like, did it or to see, but it is in that, like, situation of, like, as long as I feel safe, as long as I feel, like, comfortable. So for me, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if there is any kind of, like, gray area with me or things that I, like, there may be definitely things I love more, maybe not things that I love less, but just certainly things that I love more. I can probably throw a curveball at you that maybe you might not anticipate, some people might not anticipate. I am not very keen on being eaten out.
Okay. I was actually so curious because of our initial conversation about receiving. What is it that you don't like?
I don't know, to be honest with you, it just has never really been my thing.
Mm,
And, like, I don't know, I've definitely kind of opened up to it more now. I will say I think that when I was super young, I know I was just very immature and kind of like that it was that weird thing of like, well, I don't want anyone's head down there. And it was like,
yeah.
it's different when I do it to them. But then, as I kind of like got over and got past it, it just was like never really my thing. I don't know if it was maybe just the thing of like I'd never found anybody who's done it really well or who's particularly skilled at it. Maybe I never really felt like anybody really wanted to, even if
Yeah.
they did sort of thing, but it wasn't like something they super liked, same thing of like, it's super hot when you can tell somebody wants to like suck your dick. It's super hot when you can tell like somebody really enjoys eating someone out or something. And
Yes.
I don't think I've ever experienced that. I think I'm more open-minded to it and definitely like more receptive and accepting of the idea of it. But like, yeah, for like years, it would just like, I'm like, "I'm so good." We would be in the situation, I'd be like, "No, I'm cool." Like, we can either get right to it or, like, whatever. And then, like, I don't know if I feel like I should say this or not. It might be inappropriate, it might not be, but one of those things where, like, I don't really have a problem with, like, getting wet sort of a thing. So,
Yeah.
we didn't really necessarily, like, need to a lot of the time either. I don't mind fingering, but it'd be one of those things where, like, yeah, anytime they maybe tried to start to, like, drift down, I'd just be like, "No, I'm cool." You know, we can
Okay.
either, like, move on and we can either, like, I can suck your dick, or I straight up sometimes would just be like, "Do you have a condom?" And then, like, yeah, we just kind of go right into it, like, but no, a lot of and sometimes I would say, like, that was the more awkward part. It would sometimes be like would have to be maybe, like, stopping people or, you know, if maybe I didn't want to be eaten out or if I just, like, really, yeah, was, like, cool with, like, passing on it for the night, it was always more weird to have to sometimes stop somebody and be like, "Oh, hold on," or just be like,
Yeah.
"No, we can, like, whatever," and sometimes some people would be like, "You don't want me to eat you out," or like, "Are you sure?" And I just feel like, "Yeah, you have a condo." I don't know, it's one of those things where I would, like it just never it didn't dissatisfy me, but it was one of those things where it's like, I just felt like I was never really getting any additional pleasure from it. So for me, it was just easier to just, like, yeah, either
Mm.
move on to the next thing or we just go into sex.
Mm. I thank you for sharing that. I think that's great. I don't think it's bad to talk about being wet. I mean, lube is great and fun. I always recommend it for everyone, especially penis owners. If you're gonna jerk off and then try to have sex with a vagina, especially with a condom, use lube. Like just use lube. Otherwise, you got some sensation stuff. It does build up. As a PSA aside, but I totally hear you because I find the amount of pleasure that I receive from having another person's mouth on me really, really depends on my ability to connect and communicate with them. It is not something that I
Yeah.
want. And there is a certain type of, how do I say, there's like a certain wavelength that I've now come into contact with where it's like, I'm sure it's real. I don't know their experience, but it's like, I love going down on a pussy. I love it. I love it. And I'm like, but it's not connected to me, you know, and
Yes.
it's almost like a taking energy rather than a giving me pleasure energy. Like, I want to have your juices. I want to have this thing, you know, and instead of like I'm experiencing my entire body, I'm a person with a hypersensitive clitoris. So for me too, like until I discovered Laurels, which are the natural rubber latex panties that a person can wear, you know, and dental dams, it was often very painful, especially because then, you know, people would be so proud of themselves for going down on me and they would be like, I'm enthusiastic, you know, and it was like an intent and like not always taking the note, you know, until I discovered a
Yeah.
lover who like would make out with my cunt, like slowly and gently and warmly and suckingly. And then I like experienced my first orgasms. And I also am a person that loves hands. So I'm like, include them, you know, but it really is that thing where it's like, if they're doing it just to please me, it will
Yeah.
not work. Like, and I can tell the difference, even if they are like, I love it, I love it, I love it, you know, because
Yeah.
it's, people can always tell, even if we don't know exactly what's happening. And so for me, that is the thing that I don't let everyone do. And it is a let, like it is, that's a big gift for me to give you. It's not just you giving me pleasure. You know, I'll let someone lick my asshole before I'll let them lick my pussy. You know, like
Honestly, like, I was gonna say, like, I've started kind of, like, walking that up as well, where I'm like, that is, like, maybe a step not even
yeah,
further from me, but, like, yeah, I'm like, that is something that I feel like maybe you have to work towards. We have to, like, to hit the right boxes and say the right things sort of a thing, and, like, yeah, you can tell, like, when somebody just wants to, like, satisfy to satisfy versus, like, wanting to satisfy you,
yeah.
and, like, yeah, it's so different.
Wait, but do you like fingers and hands? Like, are you, you know, and not just on your pussy, like, how do you like to be touched with body, hands? You know, it sounds like you're a touch person.
I am. It's honestly, I'm so glad you like said that about people eating you out and it just being like too fucking like aggressive on your clit and everything. I don't know if I have like a sensitive clit. I might not say that, but like, good lord, when people would just like finger me, sort of a thing. Oh my god, the way that it would like, I felt like people would like rub my clit like a scratch and sniff sort of a thing, and it would just feel so fucking bad down there. Fucking I like you said that, and I guess, like, maybe sometimes I think that, like
I'm sorry. Sorry, scratch and sniff has got me giggling. I just
even know. I think you deeply triggered something within me. I think I'm like thinking sometimes of like when you'll start like interact, especially when you start interacting with them. Sometimes, especially, it doesn't happen, especially a little bit now as I'm older, but especially younger, they'd want to get down there so fucking quickly. They just kind of like immediately go for it and just kind of like be so rough. I am like a fingers and a touch person, but I would say it was initial experiences like that that have really defined like my maybe sensitivity around kind of touch and hands and being grabbed and being felt. Especially down there. It's like I want you to be as like obviously as sensitive as possible. You are literally touching a fucking pearl.
Yes.
Like it.
Yes.
So like
yes.
fucking act like it, bitch. You act like you have latex gloves on and you are not supposed to break anything. Like act like it, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I won't say that's like for strictly down there, but I think it's like super important to know touch and the levels of it. I don't mind being spanked. I love being spanked, especially like on the ass. I love being spanked.
Same, but
And
not if they haven't had a conversation with me about it and they pull it out of
Mm.
nowhere. And if that
That's
happens, you know, I usually with a new lover will be like, and I do like spanking, so if that's something you're interested in, we can talk about it and I can give you a little tutorial of how I like it. And, you know, if I want to with them. But like if they just spank me, I go, "Oh, we didn't talk about it. That is not on the table."
I was gonna say, like, to me, there is like an appropriate spank as well. Like, you can tell when somebody doesn't know what to do or
Yeah.
how to do it,
Yeah.
sort of a thing. And what I will say is, as long as it's like not only a conversation before, but I've had this experience where like maybe it was so passionate and you could tell in the moment they went for it, and it was like right, it was appropriate. I was like cool with it. There are moments though where you're like in the moment and they like go for it, and you're like I don't know if that's what I would have done in this moment or situation, but okay. Right? Like I love being spanked, but there's definitely like a moment to it that you have to kind of know. I definitely think have to know how to do it as well. Like
Yes. Yep.
again, you can definitely tell when they don't know how to and they're just doing something back there.
Right. And I just
But
want to say a little quick safety tutorial. We got to be real careful about where we are doing impact play because if you do too high, like I've had partners that wanted to do impact play and you do it a little too high up, like if you're not just on the ass, you can hit kidneys, you can rupture stuff. Also, you can cause pain on the ass if you are hitting too close to a tailbone. Like if you're hitting, I mean, like I like it if my pussy gets slapped, but if that's not on the menu, don't fucking do it. So in general, if someone wants to, I show them my hands making a little upside down heart as if those are my ass cheeks. And then I invite them to spank toward the crack and away, like ass cheek up, because that is really yummy with a lightly cupped hand as if we are doing our like, not a golf clap, but like the clap that barely takes energy but makes a loud noise when you're in an audience member and you want to be enthusiastic. It's really nice. Just cup your hands. And the whole point is to bring blood flow to the area to arouse it. The point is not to get all the points for the maximum amount of spanking unless that person like me has specifically begged from you today in that instance for a purple bottom. You know, like otherwise we gotta be pretty gentle and check in with the person. So that's the end of my little PSA spanking tutorial.
I feel like I'm always wanting to instruct to go up is the big thing, and to especially like to go in like one stationary place.
Yes.
It's
yes.
like I'll always meet someone and I'm like, your hand is like cupped like it should be, but you got to go up. I'm like, when you're just like hitting like that, you're just kind of like causing some pain.
It's pushing down, and that's when you can get too close to the stuff inside. It's like not the hard top part of an ass. It's from the cheeks up. Like, yeah.
So listen, yes, appropriate, like knowledgeable, like people who are in the know about spanking. Like, yes, I love stuff like that. Kind of same thing with like choking and even so much as kind of like, I don't know if I would say like grabbing. I don't think it's like grabbing, but sometimes you can tell when someone's kind of maybe like passionately like feeling you up and kind of like playing and fondling and stuff like that. I don't mind a lot of that stuff. I just don't want it to be like too aggressive and obviously too kind of like I don't know, like raccoon rummaging.
Absolutely. No, dude. That's so funny that you say that because recently I had a friend tell me about a lover that was like a crazy raccoon. She's like, he was like a rabid raccoon. He was like, like
Yeah,
going
like
all around and like really fast, like hopping over, and that's so true. Like, what is the sensual experience? Also, nothing aggressive should be happening without an explicit conversation. Breath play in general. I know choking is very popular in porn, and they don't all have negotiation conversations, but like that can lead to brain damage and death if people don't know what they're doing with choking. So it's, you gotta find the right spots.
I was gonna say, and maybe I will even say too, like, I don't know if I've ever really been choked like that, but I will say, like, maybe it's just kind of like the hand on the throat.
Hand on
Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. Like with a gentle squeeze. Or for me, if someone, this is where you could like grab me by the back of my neck like I'm a little kitten, especially, and
ooh,
I give people permission. Like if I am with a new lover and I'm moving down to their cock or pussy, I'll be like, now, I don't mind a little bit of your hand on my head, but since we're just getting to know each other, if there's like pushing or moving, I will switch activity. I'm open to a little bit of like squeezing on my hair, but let me lead my head, and when I'm
yeah,
getting to know someone, that's kind of, and then when I
I'm
get to know them, I'm like, grab me, push me, steer me, blah, blah, blah. Like it's like, but it's trust building. And so I always say, as we're getting to know each other, here's how I like it.
I am like the same way. I think I'm like permanently kind of the same. I always want things to be like, I'm so glad you mentioned kind of the sensuality of it all. I always want things to be kind of like sensual and maybe not necessarily loving, but maybe like gentle and just kind of like controlled,
Yeah.
maybe. Even if it's
Building
a
to intensity.
yes, yeah, even if it's like a controlled chaos, I was gonna say like it's just controlled, I guess. I was gonna say I don't, especially when like giving head or sucking dick sort of a thing. I don't have a problem with a guy maybe wanting to like put his hand on my head or like move me. But there's, the guy who very gently is like trying to move you or like guide you along. And then there's the guy who's just like shoving your face into his like
Yeah.
dick and like making you choke on it. And
And
I don't like
and
that.
like no. I'm like, if I'm gonna choke on your dick, I'll control it. You're welcome for that gift. And also like my neck is extremely important.
Yeah. No, literally, like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, we're not, like, wrestling, and wrestling, I'm like, we're not roughhousing, in
Yeah.
this playtime, like, let's be gentle with each other, like,
Yeah.
and respectful and whatnot, but, like, yeah, I don't mind having my hair pulled,
Yeah.
just kind of depends, like, I feel like it's the same thing with spanking where, like, you can tell when, like, the move is right to go for it, and other times when they're maybe just kind of, like, doing it to do so.
Right.
I feel like I would be remiss to not talk about how much I like having my well, I like playing with my boobs, but I like other people playing with them more, I'll just say. Whether
Tell
it's
me.
like kissing or like touching, grabbing, like fondling, and I'm like very sensitive, like on my nipple especially. Again, I'm acting like Mother Mary or something.
Oh,
I'm
I
like
love it.
very sensitive. I'll give like the very dirtiest tip and trick about me. I love when it's either whether it's like while we're fucking or you're like, oh, I have to go back to that. Either while we're fucking or whether you're eating me out, like whatever. If we're like playing with boob up here, we're doing some boob stuff. If you like pinch my nipple and then like just twist it a little bit and just kind of like roll it in your fingers ever so slightly, it's like the quickest way to make me finish. Like quickest way to make
You're one of those people. That's so cool.
and it not to go back to astrology, but I do think it's the Cancer thing. I remember certain
Cancer works the
zodiacs
best.
yes, I was gonna say, like, I remember I learned that and I was like, I love, love, love people on my chest. Like, love. It's like the quickest way to like, yes, make me finish like that. Like it is the quickest way to kind of get me like turned on in a
Wow.
sense. Like anything, like if you just go back to chest for me, and I think especially kind of like nipple, and like mine are very sensitive, I will say.
Okay.
Like that's I've had maybe some partners who do know that will, like, try and go for it as a quick way to, like, make me finish, and I'll, like, have to move their hand down or something, and it's like, "Wait, let me enjoy this time," and, like, we'll
Yes.
get there, like, eventually, but, like, yes,
Mhm.
it is, like, a very, like, quick hack for me.
I love that. I'm so glad that you said that too, because I have heard so often. Ooh, hot take. Okay. My pleasure is not about coming. Yes, I love orgasming. No, I don't want to rush to it. And for me, I'm the type of person that if I come right away, like it can ruin the rest, like then I'm done. Like I'm a little bit, like some days I'll get so oversensitized then I'm done. So the people that are like trying to make me come right away, I'm like, stop, just let me
Yeah, like, let's
experience it.
enjoy.
Yeah. It sounds like you're
think it's like meant to be enjoyed like that. I feel like we were talking about food earlier and kind of like how sex relates to food even.
Yes.
I feel like you're meant to savor kind of the moment of sex like that. Like it's not about the like impact and kind of like that instant moment at the end. To me, it's like everything else that's happening in between and how it all feels in between there. So yeah.
Absolutely. What about parts of your body that are not necessarily like sexual that like receiving attention? Like maybe neck, ears, back? Like are there any other things that are just like generally arousing, or is it touch in general?
I think it is a bit maybe kind of touch in general, but I will say like my legs a lot too. Especially obvious, I think anything you kinda go upper thigh, people are gonna get very kind of, like, tense and worked up and everything, but even just kind of, like, lower knee, if, like, you put your hand on my knee, like, lower knee, calf stuff like that, touching my legs, like, yeah, I think can get me really turned on, not my feet, not the feet.
Okay.
I figure sometimes will be honest, I fantasize sometimes, and I think about the idea of, like, getting fucked and somebody, like, massaging my feet during it or maybe trying to suck a toe. I don't know if we're actually gonna get there in life.
Okay.
Well, like, I who's feet, no. Legs, yes, I'm cool with
Okay.
legs. I do like being, like, kissed on my neck. I don't know if I've ever really had people just and, like, yeah, the throat on my neck stuff. I don't know if I have a lot of experiences of people just kind of, like, running their fingers and
Mm,
stuff along my I think it's touch, but, like, kind of specifically, I do kind of like the idea of, like, finger touch maybe, I think, like I don't know, I guess maybe I love hands, I guess, and I think,
me too.
I don't know, being very handsy like that is just okay with me, I'm fine with it. Sometimes what you do with your it's very rugged, like, I don't know. I think it may be touch in general, I don't know if I think it is, like, specific points. I think maybe, yeah, same idea of, like, some get me more turned on than others, but I wouldn't say there are any that, like, don't.
Mm,
I wanted to go back to this, going back to the eating out and everything. One thing that will really turn me on and, like, cutie bear is if you hold my hand while you're
I love that. Oh, I don't think I've ever heard that, and I don't know if I've tried that. Hold my hand while you eat me out. That's so hot.
I remember there was, like, one guy that I just felt we weren't dating, I just felt very emotionally connected to him, and, like, he was just, like, down there sort of a thing, so I was like, "Okay, that's fine." He was doing it, but I think I remember I had asked him, I was like, "Well," or I either he grabbed it or something had happened, but, by one point I remembered we were holding hands. And, like, yes, so now it's, like, something well, we were holding hands, and I felt very emotionally connected to that boy for several years after. And
Mm,
so now it's one of those things I kind of I look at it and I'm like, I think that was just something that, like, yeah, maybe I enjoyed about it, maybe I liked it more about it. I can't really remember if in the moment I responded any, like, better to it or if I really, like, even enjoyed it so much after, but I remember that specifically from the situation and scenario, and now it is something that, like, yes, when I think about being eaten on, I'm like, that is something that I think I would like, as long as you're holding my hand or can come back and hold my hand throughout it, like, I like it. I think it's, like, sweet. I think there is something kind of sexy about it too, and then
yeah.
maybe it's just kind of emotionalness of it all, but, like, yeah. I remember I said that to a girlfriend a couple well, maybe a few months ago, and she, like, laughed. She's like, "You big baby?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am a
Yeah.
big cancer," like, and I'm okay with it, but, like, I love it. And if somebody will go for it, like, yeah, I'll definitely double back.
I love that, and now I'm so excited to try it. That's so cool.
I think it's,
Dang.
like, so sweet, and then it's, like, one of the things where it's, like, you still have another hand too, so, like,
Yeah.
you can still find and both of you do, you can still find you can do whatever, but, like,
Yeah.
there is some, like, I think connect especially in that type of moment as well, like, there's just kind of a sweet moment of connectivity to have maybe.
I think that's such a sweet act of intimacy that, like, shocks no one out in public, but also is not something that necessarily I have ever experienced in a casual hookup or a romantic, like a love person hookup. So that's like, I love that. I really love that. Okay, so if other things pop up as we talk, feel free to include them, but I would love to hear how you learned about sex. Like, what was your sex education like? What messages did you get about it growing up? And just like, how have you stumbled or run through this experience that is learning about sex?
I don't know, I think feel like I have to be very open about the fact that I don't know if I've ever really been taught about it or really even had, I guess I wouldn't call it a formal training, but like,
Yeah.
any real formal education in it, which for me, to me was always like to my detriment. I don't think I needed any
Yeah.
like huge formal instruction on it, but I think something that really bothered me about kind of like sex and growing up and kind of a lot of my upbringing is that there was kind of a lot of assumption that I seemingly had an idea or a knowledge of something when I just kind of didn't.
Yes.
I feel like sex was like one of those big things where like for some reason every adult in the kind of grand sphere seemingly thought was very well educated about sex. I knew about it, maybe I knew how to keep myself out of like bad situations, whatever. But I don't know if I could have actively said that as a child. Did I keep myself out of like situations? For sure, but I don't know if I could have actively said that it was because of an education or any knowledge passed down to me. It just was kind of by circumstance. Yeah, and again, like it's all a physical game. So kind of being that I wasn't the most attractive young child. So like being that young and it not maybe being an opportunity to me or being as readily available to me maybe as other kids, maybe it served me better, but I thought it was like to my detriment. I guess a lot of my kind of like sex education and just kind of my knowledge of sex, my experience with it, of like what is sexy or like anything has to just kind of do with like TV and media. I watched Degrassi growing up, I watched like Gossip Girl, like I watched all the kind of like teeny bopper dramas. So I knew about sex to a range to an extent. I didn't have my own sexual experiences until maybe I was maybe yeah, like 16 or so.
Okay.
And by that point, I felt like I was, like, really late and, like, really uneducated and, like, super unaware of things. I think I felt very uneducated when I first stepped into it at 16, but I won't say I had sex very quickly, but I had sex before leaving high school sort of thing, before going to college, I guess you could say, and I feel like it was one of those things that by the point that I had sex, I feel like it was something that I realized very quickly, there wasn't maybe, like there was sex education and, like, yeah, there are certain things that you could be taught to, protect yourself, keep yourselves out of maybe harm's way in bad situations, but in terms of kind of, like, really, like, knowing maybe kind of about sex, the experience of sex, what you like in sex, what sex is kind of even on a personal level versus kind of a broad level. I think that that could have only been learned and I could have only really gotten that through like my own personal experiences with it. And then like, yeah, listening and talking to others, especially with like women and girls. It's like, it's one of those like topics and subjects that I feel like is like forbidden and taboo and that we're supposed to kind of be very like mum's the word on. And then even if we do talk about it, we have to kind of like speak about it in kind of specific terms and frames. And
Right, right.
I don't know, I feel like when you really whether and even when you are speaking within those frames and those kind of like parameters, there is still like something to learn. But like, yeah, having that conversation with other women and talking about it has taught me things. I've learned new things. I picked up new tricks and
Yes.
trades, like to say sort of a thing. I did used to I don't know if I would say I used to watch a lot of porn, but I did used to watch porn. That's something in the more recent years I think I've just kind of like weaned off of for like a lot of different reasons. I was gonna say I would not say porn is like a great educational space or should be really deemed an educational space for learning about sex at
And
all,
yet it
truthfully.
is the default because until I make the edge-erotic content of my dreams, there are few things out there, mostly behind paywalls, where people can see stuff and learn. But
Yeah.
but humans always learn from any story that we are especially watching, right? Like books we learn from, but like we're always going to learn from what we see on screen. And we're taught to mirror and model those behaviors, And so it's like porn is an education tool, whether we want it to be or not.
Yes. I was gonna say it's crazy how much you learn from it without really thinking that you're learning anything. And I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, you even something like sucking dick, right? Where it's like, I don't like having my head like pushed down. That's like one of those things where it's like, but in a porn, it teaches you that that's okay and that's what you should be like having
Yes.
done to you. Like it takes a lot of like unlearning and like deprogramming and then like your own kind of like personal kind of like I guess self work and kind of self education to like learn like how you actually want things, sort of a thing. Yeah, and like I feel like I guess going back to things you were saying earlier, I also relate to that thing of like being told like experiencing an orgasm, but then being told like, well, you won't really know what it feels like, or you won't know what you really like until you like do it yourself, sort of a thing. And, I think there is some merit to that, but I also think that there is so much more outside of that as well to kind of like learn. So there are ways to educate yourself about sex and like your own personal experience with sex and everything else that I guess maybe are just really understated and kind of on the low, maybe.
Oh, are there specific things that you're thinking of, or do you mean like conversations with people? Because
So yeah, I think it is just having conversations with other people. I think it's like, yeah, it's hard though, because like, yeah, sex is just such a like, especially for women, such a like taboo thing to kind of like bring up in conversation and want to talk about. But I think it's important to talk about. Like there is
I do
so
too.
much like in just like not I don't know if I call it misinformation, but just like bad educational tools that aren't actually like educational and that don't actually like, know, I don't feel like really I don't wanna say teach you what sex is about sort of a thing, but it's like we have, I feel like, not even a broad spectrum. We just have what's been given to us, what's
Yeah.
taught to us, and we're supposed to kind of like accept to be known as sex. And then we have what I think is like actual sex, which is like an experience that like all parties, people are supposed to like actively enjoy. Again, it's like, yeah, recess or playground for adults sort of a thing, right? Where I'm like, I just don't know, that concept to me is not the same concept as like what you are shown in porn and
Yes.
whatnot. No.
Totally. It's not porn doesn't seem fun half the time because it is performative, and I don't get me wrong, like I'm not anti all porn. Also, porn is not one thing, it's bajillions of things. But I just know that many of the educational tools that I came across in my younger years and even in my more recent, more organized research have just left me with larger questions and or have vagueness written into them because of that implicit communication. And I just, I was the person that was always trying to ask my girlfriends questions, and they were like, "Ugh, why do you want to talk about that? Why do you want to know that?" And I was like, because I don't know, there was this sort of like, you should know or you'll figure it out. And it's like, maybe, and how? Like, and why create blocks on the path to pleasure? What if we all got to learn pleasure and feeding ourselves in partnership, in both ways? And also to go back to what you were saying about the masturbation and the partnered sex, both are great. Both are great ways to learn. They're not the same thing. They're just two
Mm.
separate things. Like they're not
I also don't
interchangeable.
I guess my question too around it sometimes is like, why would we not want to be like either explicit or communicative in how we want to receive pleasure?
Right.
Like, I think that's such a like odd as when I think about it like all the time with sex. It's like such an odd thing to me that like it is such a kind of like taboo conversation and that we don't just kind of talk about it because it is I don't even know if it's such a serious thing, but it's such a personal thing maybe that you would think that you would wanna have more open conversations about, like, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, like, how I like to be touched, how I don't like to be touched. Well, it's just always I don't know, to me, I and maybe that's also maybe why I'm into, like, kind of, like, the dirty talk and the communication and the words of it all. I think maybe because it's framed as such a, like, again, taboo topic and such a hard conversation to have, there's something, like, very attractive in, like, the confidence it apparently seemingly takes to sit down and, like, have these conversations or to sit
Yeah.
back and say, like, how what I like or maybe I don't like that too much. You could try doing this differently, like, whatever, like
Confidence and the willingness to connect, because that is actually vulnerable. I still struggle with it in my own personal life sometimes. Like, and there are many places where I do not struggle with sexual communication. And then there are these things that still get me and they get me by surprise. And so it's like, well, I didn't have practice. I didn't have a framework. And when I do, I have a great time. So when did you start talking to your friends about sex? Like, was that something that happened before you were sexually active, or was it like once you started having sex? Like, do you remember?
It started, I think, before I was probably very sexually active. Maybe I had kissed some dudes sort of a thing, but I think it was before I really got sexually active. I will say this too. So yes, I was the only girl. I have an older brother. I often found myself just kind of with a lot of guys or a lot of his male friends or just like guy friends sort of a thing. A lot of the time, it also kind of growing up when hearing about sex, not so much talking about it, but kind of, yeah, when just hearing about sex, it was coming from guys that was another thing that really kind of, I think, informed my sexual education for a while, was hearing how, whether it was my male friends talking about their girlfriends or whomever, was just hearing how sex was being talked about from a male prerogative very much kind of shaped sometimes the things I would do and what I found sexy and whatnot. But in that same sphere, though, it's different. Guys will talk about like sex to each other and it's a pretty comfortable conversation. Girls and guys talking about sex, especially at that young of an age, sometimes doesn't really, it's not really the same. It doesn't really go over very well. And I think that, yes, something that was unfortunate for me for hanging out with like kind of guys was like, I don't want to say that I always had like sex on the brain sort of a thing, but I did kind of sometimes feel like I would go into conversations with like other girls and I would just seemingly be like the horny 13-year-old boy in the corner that just wanted
I'm
sex.
still that person, hence we are here, but like I totally feel you.
Well, it would baffle me because they never wanted to talk about it, and I'd sit there and I'd be like, "I just don't understand." Like, and so
Yeah.
it was so weird for me, like, yeah, really growing up in high school because, like, yeah, I feel like I wasn't it wasn't really a thing I talked about maybe around my guy friends or with my male friends, and anytime I really tried to kind of maybe open the conversation with my female friends, I felt like I was maybe looked at really differently or looked at really weird. Um, I think for me, though, it's just always been, I don't know. I guess I just never really had any shame around it. Maybe sometimes I feel a little, especially at that young of an age, maybe I felt a little embarrassed, but I just never, I don't know. Again, growing up kind of with, when you grow up like around guys, you'll get that kind of same instinct of just like, well, they can talk about it. Why can't I? Like a lot of my framework of my personality from hanging out with like men like that at a young age, I had this idea in myself of like, well, he can do that. Why can't I? Like I had the spearheaded confidence of a man when I probably really shouldn't have. Like,
I
yeah,
love
so
that. I think that's fine. I mean, and also like that's great. Like, thank God, you know?
yeah, really. But yeah, like when I guess like sometimes, yeah, I would have that conversation about sex or I'd want to have that conversation about sex. And I still don't understand why women and girls can't have that conversation. It's like, why would, not only are they talking about it and they're talking about it pretty like graphically and explicitly, like I just don't understand why we wouldn't talk about it as well, sort of thing. It just doesn't really make sense to not have as a conversation. So I guess I will say like, yeah, it was always something where, while it might not have been an open conversation kind of in my personal life with either my friends, it definitely was not an open conversation with my parents either. I'll say that too. I think I just always kind of, I didn't carry any shame about it. I didn't take too much out of it or anything. I think I just always was very maybe accepting of the conversation within myself at least, or I was, I don't know, maybe I was just always open to sex and kind of all the parameters of sex. So yeah, it's always just kind of been a very open conversation within myself and a conversation that I don't mind having with myself. I think that, while talking about it, since we're talking about it, I think just as much as it is a conversation with others, it is a conversation with yourself too. Like
Yeah.
back to kind of that idea of like, you don't know what you like until you try it yourself. Yeah, yes and no. I think there is like, yeah, I do kind of need to discover what I like. Maybe I don't have to physically do it to discover what it is, but I do at least have to like put some thought into like, what do I like? Even having this conversation of being asked, like, what turns you on? Like, I feel like things like this are just so good to, yeah, keep that conversation going within yourself, keep that kind of mental stimulation and that mental conversation and engagement with like sex and connectivity like that. Yeah, I'm very thankful, I think, that I have that kind of frame or mindset around it, I guess.
I love that. And also I was recently listening to my favorite podcast, the Huberman Lab, and it was a conversation about our internal voices. And they were talking about how important it is for us to get like all the chaos of jumble of thoughts up here organized into language so that we can understand ourselves better. And whatever, they had studies that had, people talking to other people and or journaling, and they had like a stronger sense of coherence and like less angst about all the jumble that's bouncing around than the people that were just supposed to think about stuff. So I think it is an ongoing journey for all of us, and I love that. So as you reflect on the sexual experiences that you have had, What are some maybe, I don't know, standout lessons or just moments that leap out to you? You know, oftentimes first experiences are very important to us, but just take a second to kind of like reflect on what you have experienced in your different loverships. And you can share specific stories or just like moments that stand out to you. I like love knowing from your personal timeline what has shaped you.
I think that it's so hard, because I feel like I don't wanna categorize them. And in truth, I think they all fall into the same category. But I will say I had this one experience with one guy. It was, like, very random. It I shouldn't call it a one night stand because we hooked up, like, 3 or 4 times, so it wasn't a one night stand at least. But one of those things where I was on a trip, I just hooked up with a random guy, but it was one of those things where, like, even in that one kind of random interaction, he had made me feel, like, so wanted kind of out of the experience. And it was one of those things where, like, I could tell that he was, like, attracted to me. We talked for a little while after, and it was one of those things I remember he said that he liked talking to me sort of thing, so I knew there was some kind of maybe mental stimulation there, and I think that, like, I always say to myself especially that that kind of situation, that kind of whole moment, it's very tumultuous and, like, tumbles into, like, a whole situation in and of itself, but the situation in and of itself and even the moment very much has shaped and kind of defined not just, like, who I've kind of grown into as an adult, but, like, the experiences that I want to have, like, going forward or the sexual experiences that I wanna have going forward. That was the first time that I had felt like if there was maybe one person that I, like, had to choose, he was probably, like, the one person I felt like, yeah, wanted to be there and have sex with me. Even though he didn't know me, we had no emotional connection at the, like, time, like, it was very known to me in that experience, like, in those couple of hookups that, like, he wanted to have sex with me, or at least it felt like it. Since having that experience, like, yeah, I going forward, I always just kinda look at it as, like, I want someone who gave me that energy, that I
Mm.
didn't, like, have to question whether I was turning him on or not. Like, he was, like, the first guy we were, like, doing he was, like, blabbing about something, and so I started kissing on his ear because I didn't wanna, like, talk about it anymore. I guess that was my whole thing, and I remember he had, like, told me later on that I had, like, done little things that, like, had turned him on in a certain way. That was the first time I had been told stuff like that and received, like, feedback. I don't know, like, this idea and notion that somebody, wanted to engage with me in that way and enjoyed engaging with me in that way. So that experience I definitely, like, take with me, and that is kind of like the framework of what I, like, look for and kind of like maybe aspire to or try and kind of connect with going forward. That I don't know if I would call it passion, but maybe like that of passion and that just kind of like attraction, like intense attraction, immediate and like very like permeating attraction, I guess you could say. And then I guess it's just like, yeah, like I look at in a general sense, I look at kind of like all the other maybe couple of people I've had sex with, and I'm just like, I don't want any of that, right? Like I sit there and I'm like, I don't want it's so weird to look back on it now because in the moment you could have never told me, like, or
Relatable.
that they
Totally.
be there with me or like whatever. But like now looking back on it, I sit there and I'm just like, oh girl, I don't want any of that. Do you wanna know what? This is, like, so hyper fucking specific, but I'm gonna say it because it's on my brain. I keep seeing this person's face in my fucking mind. If any man psychoanalyzes me before trying to fuck me again, I'm gonna beat his ass, and maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, you should because I think that's so important, especially considering the concept of sapiosexual. I have had the experience where someone's like, "I'm a sapiosexual. Let me tell you about yourself," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, yeah,
At the time, it was, like, so attractive because, like, yeah, I guess I felt like somebody had, like, seen me. I felt seen. I felt recognized. Now I sit back and I look at it and I'm like, "Bitch, get out of the
get
fucking
out."
car.
Yeah.
Like, walk away."
Yes.
Like, and
Yes.
it's like he wasn't and nothing bad happened, like, none of that, but it's just like, I don't wanna be in any type of, like, almost physical interaction with somebody who feels the need to do that with me before, during, or after. Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
like, no. And maybe that was, like, hyper specific, but, like, it's, like, stuff like that that I just, like, I don't go for anymore.
Beautiful. That was such a good thought that I actually just wanna spotlight for a second because I think what it gets at the heart of for me and just to be totally honest, I've been hoodwinked more than once. You know, they get you because and those are pickup artist moves, like, those are
Yes.
charlatan moves because
I would
instead of being really curious about my experience, they're telling me about myself, and there is some part of that where I'm like you said, it's like, "Oh, I feel like they see me," but they're actually projecting. It's a full projection experience. And just because they guess some stuff right, it robs us both of the opportunity to connect on a deeper level. And it oftentimes signals that there is a control need in them that's not met, or there's a lack of safety, and or like there are kind of like, I mean, I've been in some cases where there were like sociopathic narcissistic tendencies that I discovered later, and that's been a recurring pattern. Like, I am a magnet for narcissists because they're like, you seem like a good enough person to admire me, you know? You're smart, you're pretty, you're sexual, please admire me, you know? And so I'm like, okay, I learned that that's, you know, an early warning sign in many cases.
No, same. So, like, again, I'm not uncomfortable with sex, but I can register where like sex can be kind of maybe like a tense experience or just kind of maybe a nerve-wracking one. I think anybody who can like take the piss out of it, as the Brits like to say, if you can take the piss out of it, it's like good, it's fine. I think sex is meant to be fun. I think it's meant to be playful. If you can come into that sexual, I like used to maybe sometimes laugh when I finished because it did make me kind of giggle to like finish be in that moment and
Oh, me
situation.
too. I laugh a lot.
I was gonna say sometimes now it's one of those things where I just find myself giggling and laughing a lot during sex, and it's not that anything is funny, but it's just like sometimes it's just like it's fun. And so
Yeah.
for me, I like I love that if you can kind of come in with that same type of playful energy. It was a really kind of chance encounter, but it worked for the moment. Same guy that I kind of had the whole moment with when we were having sex, or I think we were about to start having sex again. And this song started playing. It was all like R&B and like rap music, like slow rap music. And then I think it was Absolutely by This Is a Story of a Girl who just like comes on at random in this playlist. And we just both started laughing, but it was like so hot and like so fun. Like if you can kind of like take this out of it, we can throw a little joke in there and have some fun like that. Stuff like that. I would always bring that back. I search for not like maybe hyper specific moments like that, but I do feel like I look for partners that are like who are comfortable in their own skin and comfortable enough with sex to kind of like, yeah, be playful about it, be a little silly.
Absolutely. I also need that because I look very graceful and people always think I'm a dancer, but I'm really, really clumsy. And the more turned on I get, the less aware I am of where my body in space is. So I will like trip over myself and or my partner's limbs in bed a lot when I get excited, or like I'll fall off the bed way more often than you would think, you know, or just like I'll fall over randomly. And so it's like if someone can't laugh at that and can't meet me where I'm at and can't join me in creating a space where we can just be ourselves together, that's kind of a turnoff, you know? And so I love that you hit on that playfulness because that is huge, huge. It's grown up play.
I think like it sometimes can just feel so intense and so serious. And I understand why. I think it is an intense situation and setting. But there is like, I don't know, like sometimes it's just like, I don't know if it's like, look at what we're doing here or what. But sometimes it's just like there's just something so like silly and playful that or there is just an element of like playfulness and fun that can be had here that I wish was like explored more. And I think that I think sex is fun. I think that feeling sexy is fun. I think that like feeling good in your body and being playful with your body is fun. And I wish, yeah, I guess I just wish that part of sex was like really kind of explored more. I don't know if I would say that there's intimacy in that, but I guess it's just maybe kind of like that maybe emotional or a part of an emotional feeling with sex that people just kind of love to like take out of there. We love to kind of focus on the like physical passion and intensity and the physical act of sex, but there's no like feels like sometimes there's nothing well, there's stuff driving it, but it's, sometimes I guess I'm like there's a lot of kind of complexities or there's more depth to the things
Yes.
driving
Yes.
the action.
It's like sometimes society thinks that sex is a single note on a piano and they go sex, 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 but actually it's a full chord, you know, and
Yeah.
it's a moving chord, and I don't need to be laughing the whole time in the same way that I don't want to be in the throes of passion the whole time,
Yeah.
but I may vacillate back and forth, and hopefully I get the whole experience, the whole roller coaster of experiencing all these feelings, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and in my, and have that whole kind of like symphony and have it be different. Every song with another lover is different, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Really quickly, I love to talk about health and safety practices. what needs to be in place for you to feel safe and comfortable with a lover, and or how does that progress as you know them? Like, what's your preferred, like, barriers, conversations, emotions wise, what needs to be in place?
I guess it's hard. Because I feel like I'm just like trying to define that territory myself as well. But for me, it's someone who's definitely going to be like respectful of my boundaries. I think for right now, yeah, I can be very open about the fact that like sex to me or having sex again to me or participating in sex doesn't necessarily have to fit into the box of like being in a relationship or anything like that, right? But it is one of those things where I'm like, but I still need like my boundaries and parameters like accepted, I and respected. I'm someone who's very open about the fact that like whether it's in a relationship or not, there is 100% like a certain pace and like speed that I probably would want to go and prefer to like get to things. I am not necessarily someone who is I can I think maybe I'm shy to admit it, but I'm just like not someone who's quick to get physical with people kind of immediately. There have been very few situations where I feel like I've even physically felt the need to do that. I think that is kind of where the like maybe the demisexual or sapiosexual comes in, where like I have to kind of have some mental stimulation and or a mental connection before I can really physically give myself like that. But so for me, it's someone who's willing to like, yeah, accept my boundaries and kind of like go at my pace. Um, I feel like it's hard. People, I think, have a very strong adversary or just problem with connecting without physicality. And that to me is something that I hate to say it, people are gonna need to work on to be around me.
I
Sorry.
love that. No, I'm working on that with myself of like, I finally was like, huh, as much as I want this to not be true, maybe I do need to slow down and let lovers get to know me, even if it is just casual, because I don't like the feeling of being a facilitator or being discarded. Imagine
Yeah.
that. Well, how wild.
I was gonna say, like, it is very hard for me personally. So I am someone who, yeah, like you have to kind of move, not necessarily move at my pace, but be willing to accept also that things are not gonna get physical so immediately, maybe.
Yeah.
Things might get not even might, things are probably likely to get emotional before they're going to get physical. And so that for me is like, yeah, kind of something I look for. I look for people who are willing to respect that and participate in that. I look for people who, yeah, are accepting of like my general boundaries in a general sense, my boundaries around like maybe even dating if we're in that sort of a situation. I am not someone who has like I still get tested pretty regularly, especially if I think I or if I know I'm gonna like hook up with somebody, I'll definitely get tested. I think I will say sometimes I recognize with myself where I have maybe sometimes had the notion that because I'm not hooking up with people often, others are also in the like same pool as me sort of a thing. So I have not maybe been the best about like checking about people's safety and being tested and whatnot. But now it is certainly something that I'm very kind of like not necessarily big on, but I always kind of toss the question in there. I'm like, when's the last time you got tested? And especially if it's not like, I think, what is it, 6 months sort of a thing? Like, if they especially say years, sometimes like
Yeah.
I'll try and have the conversation of just getting tested in a general sense, sort of
Totally.
a
Well,
thing.
I'm always like, so tell me, when did you last get tested? What are your testing practices like? Who have you partnered with since then? What sort of barriers or protection did you use? What are your practices there? Like I go through the whole thing, and then even if they're like, no, we use condoms, I'll be like, how about for oral
But
sex? Did you use condoms for oral? And then you're like, no, and I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you about the herpes that lives in my throat, and I'm on a cyclovir, and I take it twice a day as a suppressive therapy, and that was because a partner fucking lied to me after our health and safety conversation, and so it's. And so I always kind of want to foster those environments of care. And yeah, I mean, people oftentimes will get tested 3 to 6 months. I think if you're having unprotected sex and in group situations, please do it in between every time that happens, at least a week after, So, I'm a person that gets tested monthly for work purposes, and that's like way more than most people. But I'm also like, well, if I'm going to be hooking up with someone, especially in my personal life, like I need to make sure that me and everyone I come into contact with is safe, because that's how we make a world where taking care of each other is the norm, which is my life goal.
I am also, I was gonna say, I'm someone as like a straight person who is very promotive and like pushing of it because especially straight people and cishet people have this very bad tendency to think that it's like diseases are only going to be passed around between like queer people and whatnot, and that's just like certainly not true. So sometimes I will especially very, whether I'm sleeping with them or not, sometimes I'm very kind of like pushing of it, of just like,
Yeah.
just go do it. You never know what's going to come back. First of all, you don't want to be sitting here with something you don't know you have and then like spreading it. Right?
Absolutely.
So,
Also, I just want to say in this moment, cishet men are the ones who statistically spread the most stuff because they're not getting tested as much, and there's shame and there's secrecy and there's all, so okay.
but literally, yes, I was going to say, I saw that. I think I remember seeing that stat too. And I was like, well, that's really not good for someone like me, who's, unfortunately interested in you all. So let's get tested more often. Let's keep each other safe. And then yeah, so I'm very promotive of it. In my personal experience, I will say, which I don't really love, just because I haven't really had that many active partners. And then it's like, I guess I don't know. It hasn't been the biggest practice for myself in the past, but it is more of one going forward, and I'm very thankful of that.
It's
And
a
then
practice.
yes, and then just in a general sense, I will say, and this is also probably my own ignorance too, why I've been so or I haven't been great on it for years, but I'm someone who's always and still just uses condoms. I do not like having unprotected sex with anybody that I'm not in a relationship, especially
Same.
with that. And even then, if I was, I probably still would be using condoms for a while. I don't know. I think it's one of those not just the Midwestern in me. I think it's the old kind of 90s advertisement of this is how you'll stay safe sort of a thing. And it's just kind of the easiest, quickest way, or whatever you want to call it. And so to me, it's just I don't know, old reliable, old faithful. I don't tolerate somebody in my ear being like, "Oh, it just doesn't feel the same." That sucks. Go away. You can go, like, I will not entertain that conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just, that is something, if there's one thing that I'm adamant on, if there's one thing that I've always been adamant on, if there's one way that I absolutely will protect myself, it is with condoms, and it is just asking to use one. It is my preference to yeah, use one. I'm not shy, embarrassed, or anything about it. I really don't fucking give a fuck.
Good.
Sometimes I want to look at people and be like, "Do you want to raise a baby with me?"
Yeah, I'm invest in me enough so that if I get knocked up, then I feel pretty good about this situation. Otherwise, no. No. Yeah.
Eat it. If it was a no, then you better go buy those condoms, buddy. I'll chip in for them too. But that to me is just kind of the comfortable, safe way. And then yeah, I feel for women, these day and age, in this day and age, it's hard, but they're just I think it's not I don't want to talk about an awareness, but this little things in terms of yeah, having your boundaries and sticking to them, having, I think, your standards too and sticking to them. I had a girlfriend who, I think about this all the time because it was such a strong statement from her, and I was so proud of her. She's a couple years younger than me, but I remember we were talking about something. She was talking about a group of guys, and she was like, they got into this fight, and I just left because I don't do fighting, and I do not I'm not going to stay with a man who fights. I don't condone fighting. It was such a strong statement from her, and that is just, it's a standard she has for herself. It's not one she budges on. And I'm I'm the same way with certain things, but I tell people, I'm have your standard for things and don't budge on them, And then people might not necessarily like them, but it is a way to keep yourself safe, especially in kind of situations like this. If I were to think about the condom thing, yeah, I've had people throw a fit about the condom thing, but I'll sit there and look at them and be like, well, then I guess I'm not having sex with you.
Yes.
And in almost every experience, they'll run and go get that damn condom before I even finish that fucking sentence.
And that's much sexier because someone who is thinking about my safety is the sexiest thing of all. Someone who is wanting to make me comfortable is the sexiest thing of all. And I love those examples you used of boundaries because they both illustrate that a boundary is a statement about my need and what I will do if that need is not met. If this fighting continues, I will leave. If there is no condom on your dick, I will not have sex with it. So it's not I'm going to control your behavior, because the boundary isn't you have to treat me like this all the time. It's not about their behavior. It's about my behavior and what I will do.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think I feel it's hard to sometimes maybe stay safe and with everything kind of going on, but I think there's definitely ways. There are little things you can do and stuff like that. To me, it's just always staying firm on those boundaries. A lot of the time too, I feel you'll find that it's not that people it's more so that people want to find a way around your boundary. The second you kind of really kind of uphold it and push on it, yeah, like some people might not take it, but like especially in kind of a sex atmosphere, especially like I said, the thing with the condom. The second I uphold that boundary and I'm like, well, I guess we're just not having sex,
Yeah.
they flip very fucking quickly.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden they know how to act appropriately. So, to me it's one of those things where it's like I know, people might give you shit for it, but if we're talking about safety, personal safety, physical safety, even just kind of like, again, to me, sex is such an emotional exchange that, like, yes, like, I am not willing to put myself in certain scenarios and walk out and feel the way that I have in certain, like, maybe in past years, sort of a thing. And it's like, there's one way that I know how to protect myself now. It's staying firm on some of those things. And
Ooh, I love that. I love that. I love that you care for yourself in that way, because what a gift. Like what a gift to give oneself. And I know it's tough because a lot of people are unfortunately raised, especially with modern television, which is changing slowly but surely. Many of us are programmed to understand that love, I'm doing air quoting, is really pushing past a boundary. And love can be a mutual agreement to shift a boundary. Like, I'm in a committed relationship with you. We have grown trust. I'm ready to have unprotected sex because there is a hotness to it. And, whatever, you have a vasectomy, so I feel comfortable. That's just for my personal example. But like a lot of us grew up watching Han Solo push past Princess Leia's no. And that's unfortunately too many people's idea of what romance is or what masculinity is in a heteronormative situation. And so like that's boundary pushing for me is the biggest number one turnoff. So I'm so glad to hear that you are so aware of your boundaries as well as enforcing them. That's hot.
thank you. I feel like it's so many years coming. I did not used to be this way at all, but like I don't know. I feel like one day you kind of like cross that bridge and you just never look back and go like past it.
Ugh.
Like I feel like I'm so firm in them now that it's like, yeah, it's like ridiculous to look back on some of those other situations and it's like, why did I even allow myself to be there anymore? Like, so
Oh, I love it. I fucking love it. Okay, so what are your hopes, goals, dreams, bucket list items for the future? And this can be sexual, but also just anything that falls into that category of like personal romance, romance in general, stuff that makes you go woo. Like what else
yeah.
do you want to try or experience to feel good?
It's not like my end all be all, but just because it's like our topic, I want to find a partner no matter who it is. Like I want to find a partner who is like so, intentionally invested and interested in me that like enjoys giving to me and, enjoys seeing me at like my full spectrum that like wants to like, yeah, love me, wants to like rock me, wants to like do everything with me sort of thing. A big goal I have is like, yeah, finding a partner who is as passionate about me as I am about myself, I
Yes.
guess,
Yes.
right? Someone who goes as crazy for myself as I go as crazy for myself, I guess you could say,
It's the
I wanna be
minimum
able to
standard.
I wanna be able to experience sex, I think to its fullest extent and to what I really kind of imagine and, like, hope it to be. That is something that, like, I can confidently say I don't think I've, like, really experienced or had sex in the way that, like, I truly want to, and its full kind of, like, funness and playfulness and, like, whatever, so I definitely kind of look forward to that.
Wait, hold on. I want to fill in those details because I have talked to you for a little bit. So there's fun, there's playfulness, but if it's everything you want to experience, there's also deep emotional connection, slow, deep passion, like really feeling into like every nook and cranny of your personality. What else? What else would be everything that you have imagined?
Oh gosh, sex to me is just, like, so passionate, it's so kind of, like, seducing and, like, all-inducing. It's, like, one of those things where, like, I want to be, like, loved head to toe. I want to be appreciated, like, head to toe. I wanna be, like, ravished. That is, like, something I
Yes.
really say to myself all the time that, like, I want to be, like, ravished. I think it's one of those things where maybe it's, like, very stereotypical and maybe it's just kind of the heteronormativity of it all. I don't think it's heteronormativity. I think there is an element of heteronormativity, but to me, it's one of those things where it's like, I see us, like, back in, like, caveman days, and it is just, like, rugged and it is aggressive. It is, gosh, like the appreciation, just like the outright like love and appreciation for women, I think is kind of like the thing that I'm like super into and super looking forward to. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I talk about being ravished and it's like, I just want, like, I'm straight. So for me, it's like, I want a man who like loves, I don't know if it's loves, but it's like loves me so much, that is encompassed by me so much that he can't help but like fall to my feet. Like it's his job to have to fuck me like good and well and like I don't know. That maybe sounds insane, but it's like one of the things.
No, no.
I don't wanna be I don't think I want the ground I walk on to be worshipped by any means sort of a thing, but I think I just want to be like, yeah, like loved, ravished, desired, accepted as like not just the entity of myself, but the entity of like woman as a, like a whole being. I think women are just like so powerful in that way. I like it's something that I see for myself. It's something that I see for like every woman, to be honest with you, and all female identifying people sort of a thing. Like I think that that is, I don't know, I haven't really said it, but I think that's maybe where I feel like sex is most powerful or why I feel like sex is so important and really so powerful to women. Like I think we have such a like I don't know if call it like a power or control over it, but there is just something so important I think about the identity of like female sex and how women identify with sex, how we display it, exude it, like, whatever, that I wish, like, yeah, I was just maybe more appreciated by men more. I think it should just be again, I think it is something that is all-encompassing, something that should just be kind of, like, truly ravished and, like, fought over almost by men in a certain way. All just kind of like the passion and, like, maybe desire, the fire sort of thing is kind of what I'm looking for, what I'm thinking of.
I love that. I hear deep passion, like all of that passion with a depth. And I will say, I have had some experiences of being like truly fucked silly, like fucked until I was a fuck limp, happy little noodle, and it's mutual. It's mutual exhaustion from just using each other to the fullest degree for mutual pleasure. And that's a beautiful way to connect, It's a deep
Same.
container.
For something like or for that in life, and I want it to be, like, a very long-term thing. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't want it to be, like, a boyfriend or I had for a couple years, like, I want that, like, going forward in life. I don't think that there's any reason why we should be, like, I don't think there's any reason we should be going as far as marrying people and then having boring sex afterwards.
Yes!
That's insane.
That's
Like,
the
that's
biggest
crazy.
tragedy. I'm so glad that you're like, I think that's so strongly. I'm like, wait, so you love this person, you married them, you both want sex, and you won't talk about how to get on the same page. I'm like, you guys, and like, for me, literally the only reason to be married would be to have a regular sex friend who I love.
I don't know if I could or especially when I got younger, is one of those things where it's like, I don't know if I understand why we're getting married and like have like married to a person that we don't enjoy having sex with.
Yeah.
And I can admit like sex isn't it is up there for me. I wouldn't say it's like a high priority for me, but it is one of those things to me that it's like, it's a shame that it's weird. I feel like we prioritize it in a certain sense, but we don't really prioritize it in the sense that we should. And so yeah, like I want it to be a priority and like a conversation and just an experience that me and my partner are constantly willing to, improve on, try new things in, experiment in. That's part of the reason I put down having a third and kind of like polyamory. I think it's very easy to think about the now. And it's very easy for me to sit here right now and say that, like, yeah, I believe that I just want to be with one person. And I think on an emotional sense, especially, I kind of do. But
Yeah.
then, you think long term and you think, especially, kind of like sex and, keeping it fresh, keeping it new, whatever. And sometimes it's just one of the, I just started thinking about it and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I would be shy to the idea of introducing someone in or, wanting to experiment or explore. It's hard to, it's not hard to imagine fucking the same person all my life, nor is it hard to imagine enjoying fucking the same person all my life. But sometimes it's kind of like how do we make this more exciting? How do we make this more interesting?
Yeah.
And it's I don't see it as it's something that I've thought about. So I definitely don't see it as like too far of a stretch for me later on in life.
I love
But
that.
yeah, I think I was gonna say, to me, it's just like the willingness to be open to stuff like that, to have the conversation and, to try new things. Like,
Yeah, just because sex may not be someone's top priority in a connection does not mean that it's not a very important priority. Like a priority is a priority, right? Like, and it's hard to measure them against each other because it's all connected. Wait, so am I understanding correctly? In this threesome desire, you're straight. Does that mean you want to have another penis in there? Like, or are you open to, yeah.
I'm open. Let me say this. I haven't actually like given the rundown. I'm straight. I identify as straight, but I tell people very openly, like, I'm interested in people, right? Like, and I'm attracted to people. I think it's very easy, especially as somebody who's more mentally engaged with people or who's looking for more mental stimulation with people. It's just kind of very easy for me to just see people as opposed to like a specific gender and
Same.
be interested in that sort of a thing. But I've never like been with a woman. I've never like had a crush on one. I've never been attracted to one, sort of a thing. I've like maybe kissed a girl at a party, sort of a thing, but like we don't even so much do that anymore because of how it can look and whatnot. But like, yeah. But it is one of those things. So like for me, when I've thought about it, like I guess like if it were my preference, I think initially starting out thinking about it and it was my preference, it was like, well, yeah, I would probably want to be with like two, was kind of my whole thing. And then I kind of thought about it and I was like, well, you think about the anal of it all sort of thing. And I was like, I don't know how comfortable one I feel with maybe double penetration in that way or just being double penetrated in a general sense. I feel like especially with kind of just like straight men, like I want to be with especially a male partner who's very comfortable in their sexuality. That doesn't
Me too.
necessarily mean you have to be bi, but they just need to be comfortable in their sexuality. I like to be realistic though, and I wouldn't say that it's like a stretch or far fetched, but like I guess it was one of those things that when I thought about it though, I was like, I don't know if I would be able. I don't know if all men are gonna go for a threesome with one girl and two guys sort of a thing. So it has just always I think I've just always probably predicted the, like, seen the, like, I don't know. I feel like I've just seen the end where
Yeah.
it's like it would probably be more of a situation of two women and my male spouse sort of a thing. And that doesn't bother me. Like that's totally fine. Like again, I guess for me, I get worried drifting into that sort of territory because I don't want anybody feeling like they're used or feeling like a little like sex puppet sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I think especially as I think about it and then imagine it towards the like later end of my life, I'm like, as long as it's a very open conversation between like all parties involved, no matter the parties involved and what's going on, like totally comfortable, totally fine with that. But yeah, I've always just seen it probably being like two girls and a guy. Which I'm totally fine with, but, like, I don't have any other previous experience or
I
prior
love it.
experience
Oh my
with
God,
girls.
I love that you've thought about that so much too. And I will say, as a person who regularly guest stars on other people's relationships, I don't mind coming in as a sex object as long as those people aren't trying to pretend like we're something more. That's confusing. And as long as I feel deeply appreciated, it doesn't mean that we're all three going to get married or that I'm going to come back to be their third I'm not agreeing to that. But like, take me to dinner or have really good snacks or, massage me, like make me feel special if I'm just going to be visiting with you guys. Especially I've been in instances where, if it's a heterosexual couple, because I haven't actually yet been with queer couples, which I think is really hot. But if it's a man and a woman and they're partnered, like, hey, I'm gonna pay more attention to her and I'm gonna feel like, like she's the queen, unless they have specifically negotiated a cuck slut dynamic where like I pretend to be the queen and she's like, oh no, if that's fun for them. Which I have done, and that was a growth experience for me because I'm used to being the cuck slut. All that is to say, every configuration can be cool when, like you said, there's good communication. And also, to go back to the two cocks thing, I've had some male partners who are like, another cock? No, never. No, I'm not. Never, never, never. And then I've had partners that are like, would you like it? I'm very straight, but like, I could get into that if that would please you. And I've had people also that were like, you you would want that? And then they realize that they actually are into something that they never would have considered, so there's kind of a range there too.
To me, I'm like, I think it's like a safety thing again, where I'm like, as long as they're like okay with it too, sort of a thing. I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just kind of the mental stigma in my mind of it all. But like, yeah, like, I don't know. For like, if I were talking about, I think my personal preference and like personal pleasure, I yeah, I definitely think I would, like, in some way, shape, or form would, like, very much love being fucked by 2 men.
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds like very enjoy and I should say too, I think maybe I maybe harbored on the double penetration of it all too a little too much, but, like, I think maybe sometimes too, like, it can be hard to imagine what else you'll do
Oh,
outside of
yeah.
that.
I was gonna say, they could take turns. One could be massaging you. You could get spit roasted.
Yes, and I was gonna say, like, I feel like it really kind of falls into, like, my personal, like, desires and wants of wanting to be kind of, like, ravish and just kind of, like, love them like that. Like, I've always seen myself getting fucked by 2 men like that.
Yeah, especially if both of them could, like, be as into you as you are to yourself or more, like
I will say though, like, I think as I've kind of maybe had to, like, broaden my horizons about it or, like, yeah, have the conversation in my head, when I do think about, like it's so funny. I'm just, like, shy to it, but I'm like, when I do think about the idea of, like, either adding a 3rd and it's a girl or whatever, I always get, like, so excited because I always see the, like, long part play out where I'm like, "Why do I eventually feel like I'm gonna be more interested in her pleasure than my man's?" And
Mm. Who knows? Ooh, that's interesting. I love it. I love it. I'm here for the whole journey.
I was gonna say, I, like, see sometimes I see myself later in life, and I'm like, I definitely know who I'm gonna, like, turn out to be. And she's, like, a real fun time.
I love it. Oh, damn, I love that so much. Okay, wow, you've shared so much. What a journey we've been on. Let's wrap up by noodling on, so my mission in life is to do what I personally can to make the world a sexier, more loving place, one ripple of love at a time. So,
Mhm.
this is just a brainstorm question. How do you think we can co-create a more connected, loving, woo-filled world, where we woo ourselves and each other and do things that make us go woo? Like, what do we do?
I think I feel like yeah, I feel like we were talking about this maybe a little at the beginning. I think, like, a lot of, like, woo does have to come from, like, I think just a genuine place of, like, kindness and
Mm,
wanting to do for others. It's so interesting, I feel like, as I'm thinking about it with some of the things we've, like, covered and thinking generally. Sex can be like an act of service in a way, and I think that, I think when you maybe look at it at that broad spectrum, it's kind of like, well, what does it take to, be in service to others like that? And like, yeah, I do think it is like a kindness. It's a self-assuredness. I don't know if I would say confidence, but I think it's more self-assurance than
mm,
I think confidence, to be honest with you. I think it's emotional intelligence and awareness. I think it's meeting people where they're at. I feel like those are kind of like some of the little things that I think, when you really apply those, you'll find yourself like kind of really kind of changing and like, yeah, being more willing to like give to others, being willing to even sometimes receive more from others. But I find like, I don't know, if we want to make it a more woo filled world, we want to make it like sexier. I think that like, yeah, it starts with ourselves. And sometimes it's introducing some of those, I think, very beginning things we were talking about with wooing to yourself to then being able to, yeah, take it to others. So kindness, self-assuredness, and emotional intelligence and whatnot.
mm. No, I love that. I love that. And as I hear you say this, I'm like, I get curious about the structures we might put in place to help all of us learn that. You and I are two very curious people who are really, really clearly also curious about our internal experience and our learning in our own ways. And not everyone is. A lot of people are stuck in scroll holes or just are eating whatever they're fed in the literal and figurative senses. And so that makes me reflect upon building those spaces where we can teach each other emotional intelligence. It's bidirectional.
I wanted to say, I guess it's so interesting. I was thinking about this while you were talking. We also approach sex from quite like a selfish place. Like which is so interesting because it really is like thinking about it, it can be an act of service, and it's like an act of service often to others.
Yeah.
And so I was going to say what might be a better answer to that question actually is like approaching like not just like sex, but also kind of like love in a general sense from like a less selfish place, maybe a more selfless place. I think that might be
Yeah.
kind of weird or hard to
No,
say,
no,
but
no.
like
Generosity, generosity. And I think what I've been practicing and also noticing is in order for me to be generous, I must let go of my fears around being hurt, which is not to say put myself in dangerous situations, but just to be like, you know what? I am giving to them, for them, and for me. If nothing comes back, if taking, like I take whatever response I get as information and I make a different choice going forward, but I will
yeah.
start from a place of generosity. And I have really been practicing that, like specifically for about the last 6 months of being like, I will be okay if I don't get the response I want. But
Yeah.
what happens when I lead with generosity? Well, fucking magic has happened in my life, and like really sweet, magical wherever I go. Like there was a guy I met in an elevator and I was like, such a good hoodie. I love your hoodie. Wow, wow, wow. Can I touch it? Can I look at the tag? And he's like, do you want this hoodie? And I was like, oh, I couldn't possibly take your hoodie. You know, he's like, I'll give you my hoodie. And I was like, no, 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 it's your hoodie. I can't take it. I can't just take a stranger's hoodie. And he's like unzipping it. I was like, if you hand it to me, I'm going to take it. And he's like, I want you to have it. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yes. And I was like, thank you. And I was like, can I Venmo you? Can I give you something? Can I, like in that moment, I was like, can I blow you? Like, what do you want? What do you want? I don't want to give you something. Like, it made me so excited to do anything for this kind stranger. And he's like, no. And I was like, can I at least know your name? And his name was Martin. So now I call my hoodie my Martin. That's my Martin. You know, and that wasn't even me being generous, but walking around with a generous heart. And what had literally been preceding that in the elevator was me noodling with my friend who I was with about creating a generous, more loving world. And so it was just, he was like, how are you doing? And I was like, wonderful, fantastic. Thank you for asking. How about you? And like that led to, and so now I have a new perfect hoodie that I get to wear. So, so I think selflessness, yes, like generosity, yes, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm an acts of service person. And at the same time, giving and receiving, we need a balance. You know, it's energy exchange. And hopefully when we're exchanging in ways that are lighting us both up, we really do create this largeness in the world that I think can fuel us to solve the problems that I think. I'm not cynical. I'm hopeful. Like the world has a lot of problems. I think when we're all getting laid, we'll solve them.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think you're wrong on that. I was gonna
Like
say, I
like if
feel
we're
like
all satisfyingly laid, like if we're all having good sex, no one would be
yes.
wasting time going to war or worrying about money. We'd be like partying and, you know, catching enough fish or whatever, you know. Okay. To wrap us up, how do you love to spread ripples of love?
I don't know. I feel like that's looked so differently for me throughout the years. I feel like there was one point in which I felt like I had to be so overtly outward, like kind of with my love and like always text people like when I thought about them and be like, hey, I love you. I just thought about you. I just want you to know, long paragraphs about how much I cared about them, like whatever, whatever. And now I just think that love is like kind of defined and looks so differently for everyone, but for me especially too. I feel like in a world that just seems that is like, yeah, so kind of chaotic and all over the place for a lot of different reasons. They're just like a lot of unprecedented things to kind of like factor in or keep an eye out for. I feel like the best way I kind of like spread the love is by I don't know if it's staying positive or even being kind, but I like, yes, I just find myself now being that person who is very good at walking in and meeting people where they're at.
That's
It's a
amazing.
lot kind of have to exist every single day in this
Yes.
day and age. So sometimes just walking in and meeting people where they're at is just kind of and I stress the kind of meeting people where they're at because sometimes it's one of those things where it's like, I think people misunderstand, like, it's not like I'm meeting people where they're at with kindness or I'm meeting people where they're at with, like, discernment. I'm really just kinda meeting them where they're at, like, right? Like, and
Yeah.
and that I think we were talking before, it's a skill in and of itself, but, like, I think it's very understated how much of a loving act that can kind of be to just kind of be receptive of people and to just kind of be receptive in general.
Huge.
So that is kind of one way I try and spread love. And then I think I'm just kind of like, yeah, I try and be kind. I don't necessarily try and be maybe overtly positive by any means, but I try and be kind to people. If I can pay someone a compliment, I will. I'll throw it out just because sometimes that'll make people feel better, or it's nice to just whether it's for me or for them. Sometimes it's nice to share your thoughts or want to connect with someone in that way. So, I try and be kind to people. I try and you know again, I'm trying not to say, like, spread positivity because I think that it's cliche, but I don't know if I think that's what it is.
I don't know. Maybe. What about your creative parts? Like, that's huge. Your artistry.
I am in a phase at the current moment where kind of I'm trying to transition into transition back into my artistry and to really kind of take, I think, some of like my knowledge, my experiences, my personal wisdom and wisdom bestowed to me and yeah, write stories, create stories and like spread a message and I think I have gifts to offer, whether it be creatively or in the emotional sphere or just like being able to connect with people. I think that I have gifts that certainly kind of deserve to be kind of out there and seen by people. It's a loving act to myself, but I do in some ways think that it can or it could be a loving act to others. I think that yeah, we were talking about it I think off camera, but the idea and the ability to be able to kind of connect with people and share stories sort of a thing and connect through shared experience and shared stories like that. I think that that is something that I recognize not only that I really enjoy, but I think it's something like very needed. So sometimes it feels like it would be I don't know, almost like a love letter to human connection in a sense, where I think that I might have an ability or a skill to, yeah, creatively connect with people in that way and kind of not just spread love, but spread love, positivity, kindness, like whatever through that sphere, through my creative talents and everything. Which I think is probably the cornier things to said. I don't know if there's a moment where I'm not like kind of going out and trying to like spread love or spread kindness or, create people or get people to feel some woo or something.
Yeah.
I think that especially kind of in my last maybe 8 to 10 years of life, there was a very strong maybe 5 years where there was like maybe no and things were just very bad, very depressive, very sad. But once I kind of came out of that, I think I've just like found myself to be this person that spread kindness and maybe kind of, yeah, be the kindness that I've had reflected onto me out there for people. Because I think not only do we obviously need it, but more, I think people need to be reminded of this kind of idea, this ability, or even so much as a person who, or people who are able to go out and be kind and just kind of seemingly, like, willing to just, like, spread love, and you were talking earlier about, like, always kind of, like, being excited sort of a thing. I think we need more people who are willing to go out there and, like, be excited about whatever the fuck. Why is it bad to be excited? Why is it bad to be full of love and to spread kindness and kind of joy and everything? I think my big thing is maybe I'm trying to come from a place of, like, I think a very realistic place and a very
Mhm.
kind of like self-aware place. I try not to like spread a message of kind of like way too woo-woo out there spirituality, peace, love, and happiness and type of thing. But sometimes it is just this thing of like, I think you're gonna be the energy you put out there sort of thing, and you're gonna receive the energy back. So I think similar to what you're saying with kind of the jacket thing of being in a state of wanting to be grateful or gosh, I don't know, I can't remember the exact word you used.
I don't either, but that was a huge moment of receiving for me. That was like it was wild for me. Like I couldn't think about anything the rest of that Tuesday.
To me, it's kind of like being in that like permanent and then you said it too, like there's a balance. I think I do pretty well at keeping myself in a place to always be able to go out there and yeah, spread love, spread what people need, meet people where they're at, sort of a thing, and just kind of be I guess I hate to say it, but I don't super hate to say it. I guess I just kind of keep myself in a good state to be at service to others when they need it and
Yes.
how they need it, sort of a thing.
Yes.
I'll never take it too personally. I don't take it too personally. None of that, I'm just I'm always just kind of ready for whatever is maybe brought to me or thrown to me. And I think that that energy out there can sometimes like, yeah, be a huge loving act in and of itself.
I love all of that. And I love the fullness and thoughtfulness of your answers. I really hear deep water mixed with air there, you know, all of the feelings with all of the words. And I just want to thank you for coming here today to share your stories. To me, that's a huge act of spreading love, like ripples of love across the universe. Who knows? Who knows where they'll go? Who knows what they'll inspire? And lovers, you can follow Olivia on Instagram at Liv Carter, on YouTube at Live on Film, and on TikTok at Not Olivia Benson. Links are in the description below. Olivia, thank you for sharing your wisdom.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Lovely woo humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me in family-friendly internet places at Lunar Woohoo, or if you're in naughty internet places, at Lunar Secrets. Visit howtowoo.fyi for links to everything. You can support our awesome show on Patreon for early ad-free episodes. You can worship me virtually on OnlyFans or Sextapanther, or we can work together in person in a number of excellent creative capacities. You can also ask a question, share a story, or apply to be a guest at howtowoo.fyi if you want to be on the show. And tell a friend to help us grow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and let me know how you're spreading ripples of love.